in a minute. Hello, everybody. This is Near Mint Condition. I am the Uncanny Omar, and I am not alone. We got a lot of things to talk about today, so I'm going to let these fine folks introduce themselves. Right above me is my buddy, my pal, Crushing Crisis. Go ahead. Who are you?
I'm Crisis with a K, as I'm known throughout the comic loving internet. I have a YouTube channel called Crushing Crisis, and also a website that's been around for almost 26 years, crushingcrisis.com, that has guides to collecting a lot of the DC universe. And I've been here throughout the poll season as one of the big data wranglers on this team. And I'm so happy to be able to do our first annual DC Finest poll.
It's a big deal. This is a huge deal. And to his right is my partner in crime. What's going on, Dom?
What's going on, Omar? I am the tertiary, secondary, whatever Omar wants to call me, in command of Near Mint Condition. I have been summoned not only to talk about these books, but also to do plenty of behind-the-scenes work to make sure that this annual poll is the best looking and best run of the polls that we have, specifically on Near Mint Condition. I can't wait to talk about this with you guys, and thank you once again for having me.
I think you succeeded in at least the best looking. Like these slides look really sharp. Just wait till you see them, everybody. Oh, Omar,
Omar's
you're
dead.
muted.
Hold on. I was setting it up. I was talking to Melanie. Hold on a second. Now I can. Woo! I get to say it live. I am here to introduce Eisner-nominated Curtis Finley. Look at you. Don't be humble. You've earned it, dude. You've worked your ass off. Give us a speech.
Thank you, everybody. I think we should wait till we see what the results are. But yeah, no, I love all the support. The community has been really great around this. I hope that if you are a registered Eisner voter, anyone in the comic industry can vote in the Eisners, but you have to have registered ahead of time. They're open until I think June the 5th is when the voting ends. So please vote in the category of Best Publication Design, the Marvel art of Michael Allred, designed by me for Clover Press. Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations, dude. You've earned it. It's really cool. Like, I've interviewed so many people and I've worked with so many people in the industry. I've never had a friend actually get a nomination for an Eisner. Oh, I'm so proud of you. I know you're proud of yourself. You got it. It's really cool, man.
Yeah, it was a big surprise. It feels, a little bit of imposter syndrome, because it's like, I'm in a category. I was telling you this before the stream. I'm in a category with Chip Kidd, who's one of my graphic design heroes. Like, his stuff is amazing, and I'm like, holy cow, I'm up against this guy. And there's just some really good books in there. So, yeah.
If I may, Curtis, on the imposter syndrome thing, I was just talking with my friend who's a college professor earlier this morning to sort of catch up with life, and we actually did talk about imposter syndrome because that topic came about. And typically, he told me that in a study, I think by Penn University, people who have imposter syndrome, the ones who suffer from the most, anyways, are people who are really good at their job. That there is a direct correlation. So, absolutely, do not fear. You deserve it, and I'm very proud, just like Omar and Crisis,
thank you,
to have a friend
who
is absolutely awesome and is an Eisner nominee.
What's the opposite of imposter syndrome? What if you know you're really good at what you do?
I think that's called egomania.
Okay, I'm asking for a friend.
I don't know.
Way safer than the answer I was going to give. Good job.
So today we are kicking off the very first DC Finest poll. We've got some things to discuss as we go through the slides. So there'll be a lot of information, might be a little information overload, and I will be telling you all how to vote a little bit later. We've got a lot of people to thank, and of course, all of that is in the slides. A big thank you to all the people watching right now. And that's called Omar syndrome. What the? I was just asking for a friend. What the?
If we have,
imposter
listen,
syndrome
if
is.
we're gonna be voting for books that have OMAC in it, I feel like Omar should absolutely be a word that's categorized in that.
Absolutely, it should. Okay, we got a lot to talk about tonight, and I told Melanie this is not gonna go as long as the top 60 because Lars isn't here to talk an hour and a half about the Legion of Superheroes. But I already saw Long Live the Legion in the chat.
We had like 7 of them.
Crazy.
There's
Okay,
a
good
lot
on you
of
all.
Legion fans.
That's called Wolverine, buddy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there you go.
All right. I am going to go ahead and start the slideshow. Look at all people. Congratulations, everybody. Okay. Let's see. This one here. Okay.
Whoa. We all
We're
got,
all
we got
white.
really far apart. Continental drift.
Wow, we can fit so many more people in here now. Okay, now we're kicking it off. Look at this beautiful thumbnail that Dom created, and it's in the style of those wonderful DC Finest. Well done, including the names.
As you guys might see much later, this is very much made to mimic the DC Finest book design. So I hope that you all enjoy it.
Well, if there is a Eisner for slideshow, you may be up for it one day.
I declined the nomination, but thank you.
All right, in case people are not familiar with what the DC Finest line is, we are here to talk just a little bit about it. They are trade paperbacks that started just a couple of years ago. It's the definitive publishing history of DC titles, characters, teams, and huge events from the Golden Age all the way to Flashpoint, ending in 2011. And each title line can release volumes from different periods. They're released out of chronological order sometimes, although some lines do have some that are released as a volume 1, 2, and 3. But for the most part,
So far, that can change.
they give you a little bit of a taste of the 80s. You go back to the 60s. Sometimes you go to the 40s, but it's really cool. However, some lines have so far released their volumes in sequential order, like JSA and Catwoman. So there are some lines, exceptions to the rules. Okay, that is what the DC Finest lines are, and they are amazing. Right now, the price point on those are $39.99.
And typically for some of these books, you are getting over 550 pages of comic books, which is arguably the best bargain for your deal in the industry, outside of another line that DC also does, the compacts. So if you're looking for something to tickle your fancy in a very nice, presentable format and also looks great on your shelf, this is definitely the thing to get.
Yeah, I think there is a couple. I think there's a couple of the DC Finest that have a bigger page count than maybe 1 or 2 of the compendiums. But that's a story for another day. What is the DC Finest poll, Dom?
This is actually Crisis's.
Oh, Crisis.
Porn
Sorry, I
Ventures piece.
didn't see Crisis up there underneath the live logo.
So look, this poll operates a little differently than the other polls if you voted on other things on near mint condition. And the first thing is that this poll was actually designed with collaboration from the DC Comics Collected Edition department, because they were interested, as much as we are with all of the polls, in having everybody in the community have a voice in upcoming DC Finest volumes and new lines. And that word "and" is really important here. If you voted on polls in near mint condition in the past, usually we're asking you to decide on one thing: a reprinted omnibus, a most wanted omnibus, a reprinted epic collection. Now we're asking you to actually pick 2 different things, and Dom and Curtis will explain this in a second. One half of this poll is most wanted new DC Finest title lines, basically titles of characters or books that are not yet in DC Finest. However, the other half of the poll is most wanted new DC Finest volumes. What books do you want to go in between, before, and after the books that are already on your shelf? And we're going to go over every option for all of them, and all these options we've consulted consulted literally one by one with DC to make sure we're on the right track. But I'll have a little bit more to say about that in a moment. First, let me actually talk about voting, and then I'll turn it over to Dom. So you cannot vote yet. There is no voting yet. If you go to the next slide, Omar, you cannot vote until we're done telling you about the options. At the end of the options, we will, in the chat as well as in the description of the video, put a link to the live poll. It is a Google form poll, but you do not have to have a Google account to use it. You can use any email you want. Having a Google account just means you can save your progress as you go. You can only vote once on the poll, and please, and we cannot emphasize this enough, only vote for the DC finest volumes and title lines that you would actually purchase. This is not a popularity contest. You should vote for the things that you would exchange your cash money for if they came out tomorrow. That's what this poll is about.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Crisis. What's the new titles line?
That's a great question, Omar. As many of you may know, we already have a good set amount of books that are coming out in DC Finest under lines. You will typically see them under singular characters or franchises, such as your Trinity books, Teen Titans, Legion of Superheroes, etc. And we started this because of all of the data that we have gotten and researched from the previous Tiger Eyes polls that Crisis has also mentioned and has also heavily worked on. And for all of these characters or comics not represented by all of these finest title lines, which we will get to in a minute, there's plenty to talk about on that front, we consulted also again one by one with DC on how their thought process is concerned with how those comics should be included in this particular format. We know that some of you want to see some of these books that are going to be on these slides, and some of them are also part as maps of existing title lines already.
Okay. What title lines are not on the poll? This is where it gets tricky.
Yes, indeed. And this poll, again, includes all of the title lines with in-continuity story headlined by long-running characters or characters that you're probably familiar with. And if you have been following the Finest format, we have not gotten some of those specific characters or teams just yet. Now, granted, again, because this is a poll that was heavily consulted with DC, we also added title lines for animated adaptations, which we will get to again in a moment, pre-crisis anthology stories, in continuity Vertigo titles like your John Constantine Hellblazer, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, Wildstorm, Milestone, and Who's Who. Lesser known or shorter running titles and characters are in lines like action adventure, detective, and funny animals, very much similar to the science fiction line, the war line, the genre lines, if you will, if that is your shtick and fancy. They've been doing a lot of that. The most recent one that we actually had was the Western DC Finest that came out about 2 months ago from today. And at this time, non-continuity Vertigo titles, think of DMZ or titles like that, non-continuity imprints, and licensed properties are currently not in consideration for printing in the DC Finest format line.
As a consultation on this poll, that's not, and we're going to talk a little bit later about what you can assume and not assume about DC based on the fact that they helped with this. But we're talking right now about the scope of this poll this year.
Yeah, and that came straight from DC. So that's why we are putting all these rules in place. And the new volumes for existing titles. What does this mean?
Well, we have, like it says there, we have 40 different DC Finest lines, and some of them stretch from the golden age to, like, modern era. Like, there's a lot of content to go along. And we've formulated, we've broken up these different long-running titles into their different respective eras, and we want to see which eras you think that these lines should focus on the most. Where do you want to place your money? And so you'll see in the coming slides, and this is with the help from the DC Collected Editions department. We've got all of these different eras. So, like for Batman, you'll see a couple of different slides broken down into subsections, and you get to vote on which kind of era you want to see focused for the upcoming volumes. This is a tremendous opportunity because there's a different line of collected editions that I really enjoy, where there's a particular volume 16 that just hasn't been released for like 13 years,
Stop it.
depending on how
Ernest,
many
stay-
times
stay on
people are
target.
asking for it. This is going to prevent that from happening
No.
because we get to actually have a say in that. So this is pretty exciting.
You're hijacking the stream already? Wow.
I didn't say, I'm not naming any names. No, but like it says on the slide here, we're not voting on specific volume numbers or like years, but rather the era or the range.
Oh God, look what you started. Okay, thank you, Curtis.
So I want to give one final note that I kind of teased a moment ago. The volume ranges, the potential content, years covered, new title lines. This is our interpretation, the four of us you see on the screen, of options for DC Finest lines based on DC's feedback. We brought them the list of potential missing titles, the way that Dom said, the way that Curtis said. We brought them the list of all of the potential gaps. In a couple cases, they said, ooh, we think about that gap this way or not that way. Or, ooh, we think about this title this way or not that way. You're about to get all of our knowledge on that. However, what's on this poll is not a DC solicit show. These do not confirm DC's future publishing plans. DC could change their approach to any of this due to sales, community feedback like from this poll, market forces, things that retailers are saying, additional bibliographic research that uncovers more stuff they want to collect. All sorts of variables could occur. So this is non-binding on the part of DC, but DC was really helpful. Such great partners, exchanged so many hundreds of messages with us to try to get it to be the way they think about the comics. And that's what their participation did for this. So again, this is not a confirmation of their future plans. It's just how we could project things based on today.
I want to really quick welcome back to the party, by the way, if you've been gone for a while. But more importantly, is that Faye from Xenogears? Because my wife is going to lose her mind if it is. Just nobody highlights that game enough, according to her. Okay, we're ready to move on to the next slide, Curtis. I'm sorry, Eisner Award nominated Curtis. All right, go ahead.
So I just want to thank a few people in specific. So at the DC Collections Editions Department, they've been so kind and so helpful, and it's been so fun to get to actually interact with them. Dustin, of course, but also Donovan and Alex, who have been with us the whole way and doing edits on all of this, read through this whole presentation, everything like that. We're so thankful to get the chance to do this on behalf of the community. I have to thank Joey Hines and Charlie Pote. They are the two people who originated the DC Finest mapping sheet, which is a public resource where we track all of the existing lines and then all of the books that are speculated between them. Thanks to things like Joey Hines' original mapping of every single Batman volume ever, that made this process a lot faster. So it couldn't have happened without Joey and Charlie. And then also the Facebook group, which I believe, Curtis, are you the administrator of that group?
That is correct.
So Curtis's Facebook group, the DC Finest Collecting and Speculating the New Lines of Books, have also given amazing suggestions all along the way, and a lot of their suggestions and mapping influence us. And then finally, not on the slide, but never far from our minds or hearts, Near Mint Condition, Pollmaster Jim, otherwise known as BFF Nut, down to the final hour, making sure that all of this data is ready for you to vote on and that we're doing things in a way that are going to be good data in the future to compare to and report upon. So thank you, as always, to BFF Nut.
Okay.
Did somebody say they don't care?
Yes, two people.
Check out Chipmunk Chance new video.
What
It's
are you
awesome.
Which,
Okay, goodbye, have fun.
you should be teaching right now.
Let's do it, Omar.
All right, everybody ready to start?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Okay, here we go. Pick your lines. We're going to be going through all of these different lines, and there's quite a few, so buckle in, everybody. Got a lot of slides to go through. These are your line options.
I just want to quickly go over this format of the presentation so that people aren't too lost. So what you're seeing on the screen, at least for every single one of these lines, the volumes will be a little bit different. I'll get to that in a bit. But as you might see, all of these, at least highlighted in that thick white bold, are the lines that you will be able to vote on the poll. So for example, if you really, really want Mark Waid's Adam Strange book, well, you should probably vote for that Adam Strange book if that is something that you're looking for. Attached onto the right are two things. First are the years that we've approximated, again, in consultation with DC, for how long these lines would run. And on the right of that, we have a picture demonstrating what material, what covers you might be able to see. from such lines, along with the subtitles that will also be a part of the poll. So once again, I just wanted to give that instruction before we move on to talk about these lines.
And this
Dom,
is
really
all-
quick.
Go ahead, Omar.
Just give me a second. One second. If people are looking at this right now, when they see Adam Strange, 1958 to 2011, does that mean that they get a chance to vote for Adam Strange, the 50s, Adam Strange, the 60s, Adam Strange, modern era? What does that mean?
No, you are. So if the line does not exist, you are not able to vote for specific volumes for that line because it doesn't exist. It hasn't been
Doesn't
printed
exist.
yet. We do not have a singular volume of that. This is just telling DC, I am interested in getting that Adam Strange DC Finest line in whatever year that they decide to print it out of. That is going to be on their behalf. You're just telling them, hey, I really want this character, want this franchise, want this genre. That is what you're voting for.
All right. Cool. Thank you so
it
much.
remains DC's dealer's choice what book they would kick off for. If Adam Strange is the #1 book on the poll, DC will decide, are we going to start with some Silver Age Adam Strange, with some 2000s Adam Strange? Your job here is to indicate the lines you would be most interested in buying. So some of them are self-evident, but some of them are a little interesting. This first one, Action Adventure. There are a lot of characters at DC, especially in the Golden and Silver Age, that had recurring serials and books, but they don't really have a finest amount of stuff on their own that would like crack that 400 to 500 page range. Or much like we've seen in books like DC Finest War, maybe they were just serialized for so long that they fall better under a single category. And so one of those categories, and this came from discussion with DC, is action adventure. So there's a lot of heroes like Congo Bill, Cave Carson, Richard Dragon, Judo Master, and I know they represent very different things, but all of them have a little bit less than one finest each. So an action adventure line would kind of be a chance to get all of those kind of like globe traversing, action heroes, some of whom are pulp heroes, some of whom are slightly more on the sci-fi side, under one line. So that's not all of the examples. It could have things other than those four, but there's only so much room on each slide. So we tried to give examples that would give you some direction.
I'm going to hit up a couple of questions right now in the chat before
let's do
start
that.
blowing them up. Number one, we haven't announced how many votes you get. Not yet. Number two, we are on A. So if you're looking for Martian Manhunter, that's why I said buckle up. We got it. It's in alphabetical order. Give us a minute. And there was there was another quick question. Okay. Something like this. Why isn't All-Star the same as JSA? Different. That is a different line. JSA is its own line.
Well, let's talk about it because that's one of the really interesting ones. All-Star Squadron is a flashback series that occurs entirely in the 1940s, set during World War II, I think in 1941 and 42, but it's all being released in the 1980s. I know a lot of us thought, the JS line will expand to continue that. That's why it's great to work with DC on this. When we asked DC, they said no, All-Star Squadron would be its own line. Now, the reason it doesn't just say 1981 to 1989, and this is kind of like one of the trickiest things, but All-Star Squadron always takes a long time to explain, is because there are heroes in All-Star Squadron who are not JSA heroes, but did have Golden Age material. So in the case of some of those heroes who are All-Star Squadron members that weren't part of the original JSA, maybe this could collect some of their golden material as well. But if you're voting for this, you're basically telling DC, I want an All-Star Squadron line. And no, the current JSA line will not expand to include All-Star Squadron. If you want it, you have to vote for it here.
So if you have questions like this, and I'm not calling anybody out specifically, but I know we get this all the time. Would it make more sense to have would it make more sense? Wouldn't it be better to do? We ran this with DC. So they're the ones that decide all this. It wasn't our call. We had some suggestions and they took them, but then they already had ideas and books planned. So that's very important. So if you're already sitting there with ideas, like we've already checked with DC.
But definitely ask those questions because it gives us a chance to explain the why. Sometimes it's a little clearer than others. I mean, we've been working on this since January. So some of these things we ourselves have gone back and forth and asked very similar questions too. So to wrap up this slide, we've got action adventures going from the pulp age all the way to right before Crisis. We have Adam Strange's entire history. We have All-Star Squadron, which could include some Golden Age stuff from All-Star Squadron members, but primarily is the 80s All-Star Squadron book. Then we have Ambush Bug, which would be all of his history from slightly before Crisis all the way to Flashpoint. And also Amethyst, who mostly has stuff in the 1980s. She really doesn't appear too much after that, but she does have enough that would probably take 2 volumes to cover all of her material.
Okay, somebody was asking, what about Aquaman? We are looking at new lines that have not existed, especially for the people that are now coming in, right? We're just looking at new lines. We're not looking at lines that already exist.
Mhm.
We're gonna look at those later. For
Because
example,
there's a lot of options.
There
a
is.
lot of options.
There is.
and Dom, you're getting praise for the slides. They look good and they're big and bold, baby. Everybody can read them, especially if you're on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or a Pearl. Is that still a thing? Animal Man, and then we have the animated adventures. So this is the stuff like Batman Adventures, Adventures in the DC Universe, The Brave and the Bold, Eric, which is one of my favorite series. I've wanted that for so long to be collected, as well as Arion.
I grew up watching that show, Omar.
Which one?
Batman the Brave and the Bold.
Oh, I thought there was an Eric show. I was like, what?
I know. I was like, Eric had a show.
Now, this is something very important. Again, it was something we ran across DC, and then they're like, this is the way we're going to do it. But you see the Atom at the very bottom. It's Al Pratt, Ray Palmer, and Ryan Choi. So those are the 3 different Atoms. We're not splitting them up into 3 different lines. It's kind of like the way they released Blue Beetle. It's all in one line.
So 3 really interesting notes here. Animal Man, he does have maybe a slim paperback worth of material that's before his debut under Grant Morrison's pen in what became his Vertigo title, and that's not typically collected anywhere. So the fact that it starts in 1965, he guest appeared. He had his first appearance. He guest appeared in Wonder Woman. That could all be in his line, very similar to how we've seen the Metamorpho line and the Peacemaker line work. For animated adventures, I had a lot of questions about this one. It doesn't necessarily mean all things that are DC animated universe. It just means things that had ongoing DC titles that were based on cartoons. You'll note that we already have Superpowers and Super Friends lines that are separate. This is for things from 1992 forward. So kind of things that were in the era initiated from Batman Adventures, but not necessarily all things in continuity to Batman Adventures. And the Atom, I think you will see this echoed several times in the poll, but something I'll bring up now, just so you don't have to keep asking. This means that yes, for things like Flash, Jay Garrick, or Green Lantern, Alan Scott, DC thinks of that as all one DC Finest line. They would not have a separate DC Finest line for the Flash Jay Garrick. It's part of the Flash line. So this is your first hint of that here on the poll. Seeing Al Pratt, who I bet many of you didn't know was the Golden Age Atom, means that Atom would extend all the way from the Golden Age iteration of the character all the way to the modern day. The comparison to Blue Beetle is perfect.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to add to this slide? Other than the fact that
would you include Batman Beyond in the animated adventures?
That's an interesting one because Batman Beyond kind of crosses over from being a cartoon continuity to being an actual continuity comic. So I don't know.
There were definitely ongoing series that were based on the cartoon specifically. I would imagine that those would probably count, but then not the stuff once he gets folded into the regular DC universe.
That would be my current read on the current idea at DC. But no, that's not a confirmation of future publishing plans.
Why does Harley Bidini get her own line? Because she was brought into the DC main universe, and due to the popularity of the character in the cartoon.
And that's just a long-standing convention that Harley Quinn materials tend to collect her early DC animated universe-related material because it's just so hype. I mean, they're keys. People really care about them. So in this specific instance of her character, that's treated as comic book first appearances, and so it tends to be collected with her, even though it's not in DC mainline continuity. All right, let's go on to more A's.
That was a great point, though, Curtis, because they did put out Batman Beyond in compendium format. Oh yeah, baby!
Yeah, man. Next options. First off, we got Azrael. We're gonna kick it off, obviously, with the Dennis O'Neil years from 1992 to 2011. The big one that people were asking, what the heck are they gonna do with Batman: Legends of the Dark Knight? Well, I'm here and happy to say that they are looking at Batman: Legends of the Dark Knight as its own line from 1989 to 2011. And also with the possible inclusion of Batman Confidential or other year one retcon stories like Batman: The Long Halloween. On the Batwoman front, they are only collecting Kate Kane stories after Infinite Crisis. So you're looking the years from 2006 to 2011 on that front. Birds of Prey, starting off with the Dixon years in 1996 all the way up to 2011 before they all got flashpointed. And we are going to end this slide with Black Lightning from the years 1977 to 2011.
Our years will always end in 2011 because I can already see some questions about that line didn't go that long. All these books that you're about to see will end in 2011 because that is the end date that we were given. this will also answer the question that we were having on I think it was last week, about Batman Legends of the Dark Knight being added to the ongoing Batman series. So they want to do their own Batman Legends of the Dark Knight series, which is good because those were great standalone stories.
Yeah, and to have a Batman line that's kind of a catch-all for things that were missed or don't fit in the regular main line is fantastic. I think I'd vote for that.
And again, that's not necessarily a guarantee. What is guaranteed is we absolutely confirmed with DC that they would plan a Batman Legends of the Dark Knight line separately. It's just that, and the reason we have that one in particular through 2011 is because there are Batman kind of retcon series right up to the point of Flashpoint, and I don't think that is 100% decided yet if that would go in other than just Legend of the Dark Knight. You will see some of the year ranges do end before 2011 if a character like verifiably did not make any appearances after 2004. I can think of one in a couple of slides you'll see that on, but pretty much anybody who kept appearing or kept having stories all the way until Flashpoint, the end date is technically 2011.
Omar?
Yes, sir.
Would you include Batman Gotham Knights in this line or no?
Gotham Knights? No.
I wouldn't either.
No. Gotham Knights, I mean, it was its own thing, and you probably could knock it out just in a couple of volumes. And Legends of the Dark Knight was a different era. And I do like both, but I mean, if I had to choose one, Legends would be it.
Maybe Dark Knight Returns could be in there.
The fun part for the DC collected editions department is when they get into the crossover era with Batman and seeing how they're going to handle that. That I don't envy, and both am envious of mapping. Okay, move on. Azrael, by the way, just saying, hasn't been properly collected. We had one trade paperback, and that is it.
This is Omar saying that he's really happy with his deluxe of Azrael.
I'm glad you chose that Joe Quesada cover, my guy. I love that cover.
Listen, when I looked at these covers, I was like, you know what? What would be the most representative of what DC might think about when you're
Batman getting his butt whooped for Legends of the Dark Knight is actually perfect because he was the ringer in
literally
those stories.
He literally did, yeah. So, just glad for the thought.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. We're in the B's now.
All right, Curtis, what are we looking at here?
Black Orchid, who is a character I have never even heard of before. I tell you, I am a DC noob. There are so many characters on this list that I don't think I'm very familiar with at all. Blackhawk, I know because I've read a couple of those issues in the War, the science fiction, or was it the War, the War DC Finest. But yes, spinning them off onto their own DC Finest line. Sorry, Blood Syndicate, which is a milestone group of characters. Blue Devil and Books of Magic, which is from the Sandman world of books, right? Sandman, that's right.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Omar.
So this slide answers a couple of questions. One of them, of course, we've already had a static milestone, so we know they're going to continue the milestone line and separating them that way instead of like the milestone compendiums, the breakdown. But the big thing is Books of Magic, because ever since the DC Finest line kicked off, people got excited. People are like, "Oh my gosh, they're gonna go collect all these books." What about Vertigo? What about Vertigo? And from the very beginning, DC shared that they were only going to do Vertigo titles if the characters interacted with the mainline DC continuity. So things like Swamp Thing, things like Sandman. So now it's official that that's the way they're going to collect them, the Vertigo line. So nothing like Preacher, for example, or 100 Bullets or DMZ. As of now. Right? This all could change later. As of today, oh my gosh, we're in June? June 1st, 2026. We're going to get some Vertigo, but not all.
And actually, both of the things bookending this slide are a great illustration of that. So Black Orchid is a DC character that already existed in the 1970s. And then Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean worked together for the first time on Black Orchid before they even launched Sandman. That's what got them the gig on Sandman. And then then there was an ongoing Black Orchid series after that was a Vertigo series. So she's one of these examples that kind of crossed over from being a DC continuity character to kind of a Vertigo, but still associated with DC character. And then, as has been pointed out wisely in the chat, she was briefly on Suicide Suicide Squad, as opposed to Books of Magic, which Books of Magic, itself kind of just spun directly out of the world of Sandman and also to a degree Hellblazer. But DC heroes do occasionally appear in Books of Magic, including Zatanna for a pretty memorable arc. Having it on here, does this mean DC is releasing a Books of Magic DC Finest next year? No, it might come in number 100. But if you vote it number 1, then maybe Books of Magic will be the next new line that gets announced after the next slate of books that they've already locked in. One thing to point out about Blood Syndicate here, for milestone titles, any milestone title that has enough material that it could at least field 1 volume, we have here in the line options. There are some milestone titles that I'm sure you could all think of that probably don't even have enough for 1 volume, just like we talked about with Action Adventure. We'll have a milestone kind of blanket volume for them when we get to the M's. So anytime you see that little milestone logo, thank you, Dom, for thinking to doing that. Great information design. That means it is a milestone title and it has enough material that it could at least field 1 full Finest book of its own.
Yeah. I agree on the design. This was such a pleasure to get to review and then just look at and go live with it now.
And I love the pictures. We really should do more visual stuff. I mean, it's a crazy amount of work.
It is.
We are in the comic industry. You think like, dual art word. I feel like looking at least one picture.
No, you're absolutely right.
So this is an interesting one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, just because Black Hawk was serialized originally in War, there's enough Black Hawk material, and they do get solo runs of material all the way through the 90s, that it could make sense for them to have their own line if there was demand for it. But right now it's being featured in War. And so this is just, again, not everyone, we're going to go through 100 line options. Not every one of these lines is happening in 2027. Some of them might not happen by 2037. But if people really unexpectedly show up for Black Hawk, for Blood Syndicate, or for Books of Magic, the lines may actually move up in the ranks. Let's go to the next slide.
I'm going to write a note about voting if somebody can talk about this slide really quick, and I'll join in a second.
Here's one of my favorite votes. It's going to be Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew. I love that series. And so I'm gonna vote for that one. But we also have Booster Gold and Captain Atom starting in the Charlton years, just like the Blue Beetle and Peacemaker volumes did as well. Plus another book that I've been really interested in but have never read, Challengers of the Unknown. I'd really like to see that.
You'll love it. You'll really enjoy it.
And
awesome.
Yeah. So people vote for that one. I want to see it. And then Chase, which is a book I don't know anything about.
Early J.H. Williams art.
So obviously Curtis kind of danced around the big blue and gold elephant in the room with Booster Gold being at the top there. A lot of his early material is not especially collected, even though we have some volumes collecting his 2000s era material. I would also add that Captain Atom is another Charlton character. So much like Peacemaker and Blue Beetle, this could start with his Charlton years material. He probably is the second most Charlton material after Blue Beetle. So that could be enough to really fuel a book almost entirely of his stuff before he crosses over to the DC universe. Challengers of the Unknown is one of those titles where they really do have an action adventure bent, but they go on for so long, and they do have their own DC Archives line back in the day, which means they probably would classify to have their own DC Finest. And then Chase, go ahead, Curtis.
So does Captain Carrot have his own Essentials line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of these are drawn from Showcase. So I think that's a lot of times if somebody has a Showcase line, and actually some Showcases are shorter than DC Finest. The Sergeant Rock DC Finest that just came out is actually longer than his first Showcase volume. So pretty much anybody with a Showcase is fair game here.
Man, there's a couple in here that I would love to see.
Yeah. I'd love to see Booster Gold. Like, we only got for the Dan Jurgens material after the creation of that character, because it's his character. We had a deluxe and then a standard size hardcover come out with some of those early volumes, but they're not too comprehensively collective. And I would totally love to get to see the fleshing out of Dan Jurgens with that character in one particular line. So that could be one for me for sure.
Booster's good. Yeah, we had 2 standard size editions of the Dan Jurgens stuff, but they could add so much more. Plus Extreme Justice when he went through that extreme period.
And just like with Harley Quinn and how we got to see them take excerpts from No Man's Land, specifically her role in that particular DC event, I could totally see DC doing the same for his part and role in the 52 Weekly series by
Oh, yeah,
Morrison
good
Johns,
point.
Oh, yeah.
Rucka,
Yep.
Rucka
That
and
would be
Wade.
awesome.
Yeah, I think having a line like that just to see Booster go from all of these years would be super cool to see.
Now, Omar, this has got some 90s on it, so I want to hear you talk about this slide.
Yes.
One of these has got to be your favorite.
There's a couple of really good ones in here. So we got Checkmate, and that's the stuff from post Crisis on Infinite
Yeah.
and all of the Greg Rucka collection.
Kupperberg and Rucka.
Yeah, and then the Creature Commandos, which have been made pretty popular lately because of the James Gunn animated series that came out last year. We've got Creeper, another character that really doesn't have a lot of his stuff collected. Damage, I love that character, man. While he had a short run, he totally could fill up a DC finest. And then, of course, Deathstroke, the Terminator, who had his own series by Marv Wolfman. And oh my gosh, it would be so cool to get that stuff collected. I know we had an
Omni we had an Omni come out.
Some trades of that in the past, but not fully collected. And the Omni it's only one volume. So Damage, of course, would later move on to the pages of Jeff Jones' JSA and become a big character there. This is going to be tough. We haven't even announced how many people or how many votes people get.
So for Deathstroke, clearly Deathstroke keeps appearing across the DC universe through 2011 and the initiation of Flashpoint.
Oh yeah.
This is his primary solo series. For anybody that we ended early like that, there might be a straggling couple of strong appearances that would appear after this, but that's the primary weight of the series being collected. We thought that was more useful to kind of guide you than to just say 2011 for every single one, because for some of them, there's really not significant stuff that runs all the way to 2011.
Yeah, and
quick binding. Got it. Oh, well, what were we talking about? Sorry, I just noticed that I was busy typing and talking. I'm not Crisis. Go ahead, Dom.
Yeah, I think Slade. He had a very minor, well, not minor, but he had a role to play in Infinite Crisis with.
Man,
secret.
He was awesome in that.
Yeah,
Outsiders and Teen Titans.
Mm-hmm.
He had everybody fooled.
He did, but you wouldn't see that type of material collected in here. You're looking at, Marv Wolfman decided to do some things with the character solo. So that's what you're voting for this.
All right, let's move on to the next line, which is the detectives. I thought there was only one detective at DC. Who's this?
I know that's to your point, Omar. We obviously have a very long-running Detective Comics line that features one of the most popular heroes, if not the most popular hero in the globe right now. You might have heard of him. His name is Bruce Wayne. But as many people may know, he appeared first in 1939 in the pages of Detective Comics issue 27. That doesn't collect the rest of the other previous 26 issues, which featured other detective heroes from Big Town, Gangbusters, Mr. District Attorney. All of those non-Batman Detective Comic stories, along with some other supplemental material that might be added from differentiating lines, are going to be collected in this particular line from 1935 to 1985. On the slide, we also have Dial H for Hero. Doesn't matter who the one behind is dialing on that phone. If they have a telephone and if they can change to whatever hero that they want, that is the line for you, my friend. We've also got Dr. Fate running from his adventures, of course, with the original Kent Nelson in 1940 up until 2008 with our good friend Hector Hall. Eclipso is going to be running his line from 1963 to 2001. And if you're a big fan of the Dibneys, take in Elongated Man from 1960 and 1992. We already have a Plastic Man, DC Finest. No, they're not the same character, but, if you like the Dibneys, that is definitely one that you should consider.
Is Eclipso the first villain to show up in the new line? Or did I miss one?
I believe so.
Okay.
We had Deathstroke.
Oh, yeah, Deathstroke's vigilante.
Actually, no. During that time, he was a villain, which made it really cool to see what Marv Wolfman can do. That series ran a long time.
So Dom explained detectives so well. I'll just add a note just to be clear that it's not only backup stories from Detective Comics. As Dom said, if there's other lines that had detective type stories in them that wouldn't kind of merit their own line, they could appear here. And also sometimes Detective Comics had backups that would fit into another line. For a long time, Martian Manhunter was the detective. That was the detective backup and Detective Comics. Clearly he would get his own Martian Manhunter line, which we're going to get to in a few slides. So this is really the detectives from throughout the DC universe, just like war, just like science fiction, just like Western, that just aren't ongoing superheroes and would need their own anthology line.
We are going to need 50 votes each. Woo! Yeah, man. This is a tough
We're
one.
only at E.
We're on the he's right. Oh,
All right.
hey.
Elseworlds, I know, is a big question in the chat.
Yep.
We're already seeing some lines that are progressing far enough that they're into Elseworlds territories for their characters, and we haven't seen Elseworlds stuff collected there. We checked in with DC, and of course, if you've been buying DC stuff, you've recently seen omnibuses come out for Batman Elseworlds, Superman Elseworlds, and Justice League's Elseworlds. All of them also had a trade paperback line to match. So Elseworlds could just collect all of DC's major standalone Elseworlds stories. Obviously, they've been well collected in other formats, so if you want to see it sooner than later, this would be a place to vote for it. Firestorm, who did incredibly well on the DC Tiger Eyes Most Wanted Omnibus poll. I'll be very curious to see if he does well here. Of course, some really classic material there, written, I believe, by Conway and Ostrander, if I finally got it right in my mind.
You finally got it right in your mind.
Okay, I finally got there. Freedom Fighters, which extends all the way from the Golden Age to having some stories very close to Flashpoint. Clearly, that's a little bit more on the obscure side, but it still as it stands, and we left no stone unturned. Funny Animals. This one has come up a lot in the questions. This is something that DC is open to doing. Is there demand for it? It's hard to know because there's not a lot of Funny Animals collected editions on the market right now. That's why a poll like this is important to indicate demand. This could have things like Animal Antics, Funny Folks, Funny Stuff, Fox and the Crow, some of which are really popular and long-running strips that people have a lot of nostalgia for or historical interest in. And so this would collect all of DC's owned Funny Animals, not things that they were doing as a license through 1971. And then finally Gotham Central. It's clearly, if you know Gotham Central well, it's so separate from Batman that it would be crazy to collect all of it into a Batman line or something like that. It's got its own omnibus, and it probably could have its own DC Finest line as well.
Plus, it might be a cheaper way to for the people that are curious that ended up getting the DC Compact. Hey, there's a DC Finest available of Gotham Central. It's a masterpiece.
I want to highlight one question, if I can find it here. Some people who voted for things on the DC Tiger Eyes poll, and they saw them do very well, are like, I don't know if I should vote for it again here. I wanted to do well in the Omnibus poll, to which I will reply. Actually, I'll have Dom do the reply. Dom, how close in time were the releases of the Suicide Squad Omnibus and the Suicide Squad DC Finest?
Barely any months. Not only have we seen Suicide Squad come into release alongside the Omnibus, we also had the Doom Patrol DC Finest very much in tandem with the Silver Age reprint of that Omnibus. Don't think that, oh, if they release it, that means they'll never release it out in DC Finest format. Or if you say, oh, wait, there's an omnibus of this, why would they ever put it out in the second format? I think it's very clear that DC is very much open to the suggestions of printing out the same book in two different lines around the same time, if not at the same time. So I would not worry about hampering your votes if you think that it's going to hurt the chance of another.
Perfectly said.
I
would just add to that.
Say really quick. I know we've answered this already about licensed and IPs. So Scooby-Doo would not be included in Funny Animals or Animated Adventures. Let me get this super chat really quick. Would Freedom Fighters include Phantom Lady stuff from the Police comics? I would assume everything that they have access to would be included. So yes.
Yeah, you have to think with a lot of these lines, it's possibly the best chance we'll ever get to see some Golden Age inventory stories divided up. This is very much not a mapping show, but having talked to Donovan, who works at the DC Collection Edition department, that's the kind of thing they're doing internally. They're going through every Golden Age title, and they're kind of sorting through all the stories and being like, ooh, is this a JSA All-Star? Is this a potential freedom fighter? Is this actually an early story of a alter ego of Hawkman? Like they're really thinking about that way, and that's why we have a lot of these starting in the Golden Age. And I just wanted to make one more point to Dom's excellent words about omnibuses versus DC Finest. Sometimes the thing is outside of the control, and it takes a little bit of time to get art ready for an omnibus size, but the art can be ready to go sooner than that for a DC Finest. I mean, we saw all of John Byrne's Man of Steel, at least the first volume of it, hit DC Finest before we've had an omnibus, although DC is clearly aware there's demand for an omnibus there. So again, I don't think you have to worry about your votes hurting anything on a different poll. Vote on this poll what you want from this poll.
We haven't announced how many votes people get yet. We're just working through the slides right now.
We got a
And
lot
let's
of
keep
things.
working as
All
we
right.
head on to G and H. So I'll talk about this one just to keep us moving. Gotham City Sirens. If you've been buying the Catwoman line and the Harley Quinn line, both of them will end in 2009 because both of those characters joined their good friend and sometimes lover, Poison Ivy, in Gotham City Sirens. So that would have its own separate line after those two lines conclude. Hardware is another milestone line that has enough material that it could have its own DC Finest line, just like Static. Hawk and Dove, which starts in the Silver Age and has plenty of stories there, some of which have appeared in the Teen Titans line, but then also have their book from the late 80s and 90s, which was written, I believe, by Carl Kessel with art at points by Rob Liefeld, which has largely never been collected. And then they have some minor solo stories after that, although that would mostly continue through their 90s stuff. Hellblazer, I'll let Omar get to in a minute. And then also Hitman, who we've actually seen in Omnibus for, but could also join the DC Finest line. Omar, why don't you talk about our friend John Constantine or Tyne, depending on where you are from.
I want to talk about Hawk and Dove right now.
Oh, okay, sorry.
There was one really crappy trade paperback, and I can't find it. DC Finest.
How unfortunate.
That was the one with Rob Liefeld on artwork. So yeah,
Would it be the last time that he'd be on those characters too? By the way,
no, he joins Gail Simone to bring them back later on in Teen Titans. But Hellblazer is a character that ran for 300 issues during the Vertigo era, and then because of Brightest Day, they decided to bring over some of the characters to the main line, and of course during Flashpoint, he joined Justice League Dark and became part of the mainline universe, which is why he's included here. That would be really awesome. I don't know if they would follow the mapping of those really awesome thick trade paperbacks, but
I think they're going to package them better than those thick trade paperbacks, Omar.
I think the mapping could be better. Yeah. Where's Norton? Yeah, I don't know. Norton could be in the Green Lantern books that we have already. Go ahead.
I know Curtis and Crisis really bend your brain when we're both on the same show. I do want to point out that just by the way that we set this up, nothing says higher than 2011, but Tristan Maladondo points out very wisely that Hellblazer continued past Flashpoint to issue 300 and was not affected in his own title by Flashpoint, even though he, after Flashpoint, also as a separate Hellblazer, started appearing in things like Justice League Dark. In that instance, that DC Finest line could potentially continue to 2013, but officially the word we have from DC is everything until Flashpoint, so you will not see us. As far as this poll is concerned and the words on these slides, 2012 does not exist. So the Mayan apocalypse came and we all died, and so did the comic books. So everything ends in 2011, but in the case of Hellblazer, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It could.
That's right.
Further.
New
I
continuity.
think it's also important to remember that, generally speaking, these get one volume per year. So Hellblazer would probably be an over 10 volume series, right? Like 15 volumes or something like that. That means in 15 years from now, when they get to the point where they would need to do the 2012 material, they may have changed their stance on all of that anyway.
I guess honestly, everything really depends on sales, right? You can, if they see it and there's a need for it. He is a very popular character. So I don't know. It would be really cool. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. We're on H's now with the holidays with the heroes. Holiday issues. Whose crazy idea was that? Our man. Of course, go ahead.
No, this was an idea that I think was very rightfully brought up, not only from the people who helped make the poll, but also from Crisis and Donovan. And as we were consulting with DC about this, I said, why can't we make it an all-encompassing title, not just particular key issues that were, I'll just say, Christmas with whoever in the 1940s. Why don't we make this, hey man, we got holidays coming out throughout the year. Not even just in December, January. Let's make it all year round. So that is what you are effectively voting for. You are effectively voting for, at least with Holidays with the Heroes, any holiday issue specialist story from the years 1940 to 2011. We've also got Our Man starting from his Golden Age adventures up until 2010 with that character. The Human Target, Christopher Chance, although this one maybe a little bit different from the Tom King version that you read in that Black Label series with Greg Smallwood a couple of years ago. Humor could include any humor-oriented heroes, titles, or scripts like Plop, Inferior 5, a favorite of mine. Angel and the Ape, Stanley and His Monster, strips by Henry Boltinoff, etc. And Huntress, yes, both Helena Wayne and Helena Bertinelli. Both of those characters featured in one Universal DC Finest line from 77 to 2011.
Curtis, you talk about being a relative DC neophyte, but you were the one to make sure that Plop got noted, and we checked that with DC. So why don't you tell the folks about Plop?
Yes.
Plop is it's kind of like a Mad Magazine-ish, just a humor book with a lot of different strips, comic panels. It kind of harkens back to the days of old humor magazines, like from the 30s and 40s, where you just get a whole bunch of cartoonists doing these one-off panels, kind of like New Yorker cartoons of the day and that kind of stuff. But the Plop has incredibly horrific graphic covers by Basil Wolverton, who is a fantastic artist. So you can look up his grotesque little creatures and faces. And you might even see Henry Boltinoff doing strips in there as well. Henry Boltinoff is a classic old comic strip artist who did a lot of cartoons during that era. And I think most people would probably know him best from his comic strip Jumble, where it would have a picture, and then you'd have to like have a series of words, and they were all jumbled up, and then there would be some circles over some of the letters, and that would spell out the word of the day or whatever. You see that in the newspapers. I don't know if people remember that or not. I don't even know if it's still going on.
And it's important to note for humor, I mean, those are things of vastly different sizes. Plop was an ongoing magazine, as Curtis just mentioned. Some of these other ones I know are very popular with fans of the Silver Age, like Angel and the Ape, Stanley and His Monster. Some, maybe we don't know yet what the scope of this would be. This is DC testing the water to be like, do people actually want humor? So if any of those things inside of it sound attractive to you, this is so far from being a mapping poll. It is not even remotely a mapping poll. If you see things that are within the line that are interesting to you, you should vote for that line. Let the experts at DC sort out the mapping after your line wins.
That's true. One thing I will add about the Huntress is this is a character, and this is adding to a lot of other characters much like this that you'll be reading different eras about, and they're completely different characters. So continuity, it's going to be fun to map those books around continuity. Again, this is a case of I'm both envious of having to do it and not having to do it.
What Omar is trying to say is that he doesn't want to read Jerry Conway Wonder Woman issues to figure out where Helena Wayne pops up in those.
How dare you, sir?
Okay, we're moving on to Icon, which is another milestone line. I love that series. If you haven't had a chance to read it, definitely pick up the Milestone Compendiums. But if you just want to read Icon, this would be the way to do it. And of course, one of my personal favorites, Impulse. The way Mark Waid wrote Impulse, oh my gosh, he had such a grasp for the way teenagers sounded. Like, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that that's kind of how he writes the comic. It's like, when I was a teenager, this is the things I would say, and this is the way I would look. I love Impulse, man. One of my favorite characters, early Humberto Ramos artwork. Infinity Incorporated, somebody was asking a little bit earlier about All-Star Squadron. Shouldn't that include Infinity Incorporated? DC said, no, let it have its own line. These have been available in standard size hardcovers. Then there's JSA All-Stars. These are the solo stories, and eventually would become its own series, but that's not until much later. But this is the stuff like Sandman, Starman, Wildcat, Johnny Thunder, Hourman, Dr. Midnight, all those characters that would be a big part of the JSA. And then Command E, the Jack Kirby series, when he came from Marvel to DC, wanted to tell his own Planet of the Apes story, and went past, of course, Jack Kirby's era. But some good stuff in here too, man.
JSA All-Stars is a really interesting one because this is unique, I think, across all of the new lines on the poll, where it's a specific group of heroes across a specific period. And that's because obviously a lot of these JSA characters didn't really continue into the Silver Age apart from appearing as part of the JSA in the Crisis of Multiple Earth stories. And so there's probably not enough Hourman material for Hourman to have his own Golden Age, even though Hourman does appear separately as his own line. But same for Dr. Midnight, the original Sandman, Starman, Wildcat, Johnny Thunder. For all of their stories in this period, there's a chance that we could just have a JSA All-Stars line that's basically anthologizing all of their solo stories, which is why this one's only 39 to 49. You will see that Hourman and Starman and Sandman are repeated elsewhere in the poll. I'm just telling you that now. You could still vote for them, both their solo lines and All-Star JSA All-Stars, or you could say, no, man, I want it all in JSA All-Stars. You have that control with your vote.
I love that line. I love
want
that. I think it's such a cool idea to put all these stories together because you're right. Yeah, you said it earlier. There's a lot of these miniseries, a lot of these canceled series that you're not going to see anywhere else. All right. Let's move on to Curtis. What is this?
A plethora of different genres here. It seems like a Kid Eternity, Legion, and Rebels, which is one that I see asked for a lot actually in the Facebook group. Is Legion, the acronym Legion, and then Lobo, of course, who's coming up in the Supergirl movie. So I think that could possibly have a good chance of becoming a DC finest. And Lucifer. And Madame Xanadu, which I don't know anything about Madame Xanadu. Somebody can tell me something about that.
What's really cool about all these slides, by the way, is I hope people that are new to collecting comics, even if you've been reading comics for a long time, get to learn a little bit about the history of how long these characters have been around. Like, seriously, Kid Eternity, I had no idea it was 1942. Did a lot of extensive research for this slideshow. So Curtis needs to know a little bit about Madame Xanadu. Why start in 1978?
Because she had a Bronze Age series that introduced her as kind of like a mystical DC character. And then she later had a kind of Vertigo flavored, but not, I don't think it was actually officially Vertigo series just before Flashpoint. And of course, she appears in DC throughout those periods as well. But it's kind of, that run is kind of anchored by her to material on either side of that. And also, I do want to point something out here because people in the chat have noticed it. It's why we wanted to do the slides before you vote. There's no Jonah Hex line. That's because as it stands right now, the Western line is collecting all of his Bronze Age material. If at some point the Western line were to terminate, and it seems like Jonah Hex is abandoned at that point, then we would add a Jonah Hex line. But to the best of our knowledge at this point, and not refuted by DC, that Western line will continue to collect Jonah Hex material. And so you can vote for that in the continued volume section of the poll, not in the new line options.
And Legion, Dom, a little bit about Legion in case people keep hearing Legion, long live the Legion. Isn't Legion a lot older than 1988? What is this here?
This is the acronym Legion. The acronym Legion that started, I want to say in 1989. And their founder, if you will, the person you see on the front, that's not Brainy 5 that you're probably the Brainy 5 that you're probably familiar with. It's Brainiac 2. Different version of the character, and they have a villainous team, if you will, the Rebels, another acronym word with a completely different roster than the concurrent 5 years later period of the actual Legion of Superheroes are running at that time. Rebels was made to destroy the L.E.G.I.O.N.
Yes, Real Dogs to the rescue. Somebody was saying it'd be fun to see Hex series in the West. That would be a little weird. I don't know if they would put it in there or maybe I mean, surely Jonah would get his own series eventually, his own DC finest. Who knows? Somebody was asking about Haunted Tank. I think Haunted Tank is in the War collections.
It is, but I will say on the Jonah Hex front, we have stuff to talk about later in some of these slides. So let's keep the volume on that a little bit low, Omar, until we get there.
Oh, yes, boss. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide, which is...
Indeed, we got more line options for you. If you're a really big fan of Kirk Langstrom and you have a really big itch for reading a 70s series and want to see him as the opposite of Batman, because he was, in marketing anyways, produced as this man-bat person to sort of strike a difference in parallels against Bruce. Manhunter Not only including Kate Spencer, the run that I actually do want, that I think that ended up being in my top 10 for the Omnibus poll, one of my favorite runs of all time by Mark Andreyko. This is also going to go back to 1942 with the original Manhunter, and we're looking at not just only one singular version of the character, but in lines like Adam, in lines like Robin, in lines like Green Lantern. Every single character under that name is going to be cooped up in here for that specific line. Martian Manhunter, one of my favorite, well, actually my favorite JLAer. The man who is somehow not resistant to chocolate, but I'll just say that he has an inkling for fire whenever that comes about. We are kicking it off with some of those Detective Comics series in 1955, and this will go up to 2011. The Metal Man, if you, like Dan Didio, have an inkling for Doc Magnus and the weird characters of Tin, and all of, listen, they're a very weird team, but if you're a big fan of the franchise, we do have a line for that from 1962 to 2010, or DC, I should say, anyways. And the Milestone Universe. Crisis pointed this out a little bit earlier, where we were talking about some books like Icon and Hardware that have one volume, or at least one volume of material to collect into a DC Finest line. This is specifically for all of the books that would not fit into those categories. So we're looking at milestone titles like Zombie, Shadow Cabinet, Long Hot Summer, Death Wish, Cobalt. Again, these milestone titles that have less than any one of these 400 to 672 pagers would be collected under that one umbrella for the Milestone Universe. So if you're looking at anything besides Static, Icon, Hardware, and you really want to see that material collected, that will be the line for you to vote for.
Martian Manhunter, Manhunter is one of those lines, much like what you saw earlier with the Atom, because it would include characters like Chase and Kate and Kirk. So I think putting them all in this line, it would be such a crazy line, though. But I'm a huge fan of Kate Spencer, so I would love to see that collected one day. Martian Manhunter, is the Martian Manhunter guy still here? Or did he take off after the A's? The guy in the chat that was asking where's Martian Manhunter when we just started the slideshow. Hope he's still here.
Just a few notes.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a few notes on this one. So Man-Bat, I want to point out something specific here because it runs contrary to some of the things that people in Curtis's group have speculated. Man-Bat's early stories from 1970 are in Batman Family. We don't have a Batman Family line on here the way that there is a Superman Family line. That's because the Superman Family line actually collects several different ongoing comic books like Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. Batman Family was only, I believe, a 20-issue series, and all of the stories in there kind of serialize into other lines. There are Robin stories, there were Batgirl stories, and so I checked in specifically with DC about that, and they're like, yeah, that's why we have a Man-Bat line here, because Batman Family would never be in a line its own. All of those stories would be kind of serialized out to other places. For folks that have asked about Manhunter, it's the convention throughout this poll that everybody who is under a single title or name would appear within that line, even if they have really different identities, and so that's the assumption there. Martian Manhunter, of course, would start with his Detective Comic backup stories, and I think Dom explained the Milestone Universe perfectly.
Okay. Let's move on to next slide. Curtis, you want to go through this one? Or, oh, wait, never mind, Curtis, I got this one. That's really my favorite DC character. And, of course, I'm talking about the Newsboy Legion. No, false. I'm not talking about the Newsboy Legion, but if you want to vote for those guys, here's your chance. I'm talking about Nightwing, beginning with his Action Comics weekly story. So, predating the one shot and of course predating the ongoing series. Then we have OMAC, going back to another creation by Jack the King Kirby, and then the Omega Men, the series with Keith Giffen. This is the series that first introduced Lobo, as we were talking about earlier. We had mentioned him. He's going to be in the Supergirl movie. And Outsiders, also Batman and the Outsiders, but every incarnation of the Outsiders, all the way pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths. Where's Tiger Eyes? Is Tiger Eyes watching
this guy
to right before the beginning of Flashpoint.
Right. I want to open up a discussion with Crisis here, at least on the mapping of Nightwing a bit, because we see that this is going up to 2011. But as many of you might know, Dick Grayson stopped being Batman for a couple of particular reasons in 2008, 2009. So are you surmising, Crisis, that we are going to see Lore Zod Nightwing, the pages from Greg Rucka's Action Comics, in this line? Or is that 2011 placeholder a little bit different than maybe what you're anticipating?
That's a really good question. I think the Krypton Nightwing is so different in concept that maybe this is the one time we break the rule of anybody named Nightwing would be in Nightwing, but there's really no way to know for sure until DC plots it out. However, if I'm not mistaken, Dick Grayson does come back to being Nightwing for like a little whisper of a moment right at the end of Flashpoint. So that's why we have 2011 on there.
I will double dip for Nightwing. Somebody was saying triple dip. Was that that's got to be Chubby Ray. Chubby Ray is triple dipping. Would Nightwing have issues from Teen Titans?
No.
I would, honestly, if they're mapping it a little different, maybe.
The
No, I
answer,
think weren't we told a hard no from DC though, Omar?
We were told a hard no. Sorry about that.
We were told a hard no. They're starting with Action. If not mistaken, I think his first Action comic that he pops up is in issue number 613. I think that's where they're starting off with this Nightwing line.
Which makes sense because that stuff hasn't been collected. Sorry, I do not work for the collected editions department. I'm just here for the show. Let's move on to the next slide. Try to put my big boy bridges on, and that's what happens. All right. Whose turn is it? Have we heard from Crisis in a while?
No, and I'm happy to cover this one. I think these are all straightforward with the exception of one, Phantom Stranger, which starts out in the Golden Age and continues through the late 80s, just past Crisis. Power Company, which was a short-lived title. Of course, DC has revived that title recently as part of their celebrations of Black History Month and also with a team that could be an ongoing team, but that had its own title in 2002 and 2003. Power Girl has an important note, much like the Nightwing question, where we went back and forth with DC and we got told Nightwing would start from the Action Comics stories because all the other stuff's already in the Teen Titan line. Power Girls material before 2005 would be part of the Justice Society line. When I tell you I've asked this question 5 times now because I'm never sure, and quite kindly, the DC folks always say, Crisis, we definitely answered this for you before. Pre-2005 Power Girl would be part of the Justice Society line. So that's your answer, and no matter how many times you ask, it can't be as many times as DC has received emails from me about it. The next one is the question, which would have start with his Charlton years, just like Blue Beetle and Peacemaker, and then continue all the way through 2010. Yes, that means it would transition to featuring Renee Montoya as we get into the 2000s. And finally, Ragman, who has a surprising amount of solo material, more than you possibly would expect, from 1976 to 1994.
That question, DC Finest, oh my gosh. That's gonna be so good, dude.
If we can get the 60s Blue Beetle material, man, I can't wait to get Pipeline in this specific format. Are you kidding me? Like, this is gonna be awesome. Like, to go from that all the way to the O'Neill years, all the way to excerpts from 52, where we get to see her and Kate Kane having fun. Oh my goodness, I can't wait.
Plus, Ragman, there's another character that doesn't have a lot of collections, like any. Okay, Curtis, why don't you tell us about the next slide, buddy?
Well, sure. We start off with the Ray, who is a character that goes way back to the Golden Age. And I guess it seems like he hasn't been seen past 1996 very much. So, but that's still a good chunk of random appearances. Resurrection Man. Don't know anything about that guy.
Curtis unfortunately got a Crisis special slide here.
You know what? These, unfortunately, I think everyone's going to vote for Batman, right? And Resurrection Man and Ragman and all these characters that seem really interesting to me probably won't get as many votes, but I'm sure.
Curtis, there's only one Batman option on the line option. So even if everybody puts it at number 1, we got other options. Look, Curtis, that was not
Batman adjacent, I guess. I don't know, but you know what I mean. It's like I sure hope that some of these do well because there's a lot of these cases. There's little hope that they're going to have collected editions on their own, other than DC Finest. So I love to see something like Resurrection Man or Ragman. Romance is one that excites me. Sorry, what was that?
That's the one I'm curious your thoughts on. What do you think about that, dude?
So the anthology books are the ones that have surprised me the most. Absolutely loved the horror book, the war book, and the western book. They were all great. Science fiction was okay, but I think that a different volume will make me love it even more. Uh, so I'm really interested in the romance one as well. Lots of great stuff from like I think John Romita was doing stuff in the romance years in those early days. So let's get some more of that stuff collected. Titles like Young Romance, Young Love, Secret Hearts, Heartthrobs, Falling in Love. Do these titles get a little bit, repetitive in some cases? Probably, but I think because we have a plethora of different titles to draw from, it'll be a really good collection. Sandman Wesley Dodds is a spin-off from the Sandman universe. No, it's not from the Sandman universe. This is the Golden Age Sandman, right?
Yes, it is indeed the Golden
Yeah,
Age
yeah, yeah. So this is another character that I really only know from the JSA collections that I've read. So this is all new material. I'd like to see more of this Sandman because he's kind of a cool character in those Justice Society DC Finest. Don't know. You can argue with me all you want. I'm not right, especially when it comes to DC comics. I'm learning all of this as I'm going, which is really a lot of fun. Sandman Universe. This is the big one. I think that people. This would be very, very interesting to have Sandman, The Dreaming, Sandman Presents, Death, all of that kind of stuff folded all into one big long line. Wouldn't that be something? I think that would be pretty cool.
So Curtis lucked out and got probably my favorite or second favorite slide in the whole presentation. So I'll add a couple of things here. The Ray. So fun for Curtis. Curtis, if you know Starman, which a lot of people are big fans of, and it has 2 compendiums. The Ray was actually kind of similar in that he was a Golden Age hero that was launched as a new generation of that Golden Age hero in the 90s. So that's why it's such a big year spread. I want that 90s series so bad collected in some way. It's really good. Resurrection
artwork by Quesada, like early artwork.
Howard Porter too.
Yeah. Amazing art, especially I think Quesada's like the first 8 issues. Resurrection Man, I am possibly the biggest super fan on the internet, I think sometimes. And he only had his own series in those years, but he also had a closely associated pair of villains called the Body Doubles. And his stuff his series is too long to get into one finest. So maybe it was 2 finest to have the Body Double stuff too. Romance, I don't think I could do better than Curtis explaining. Sandman Wesley Dodds, people are asking in the chat if it would include the Bronze Age Sandman as well. That's a good question. I actually didn't think to confirm that with DC. I would think yes, but I didn't confirm, so let's not say for sure. But this would have Mystery Theater paired with Golden Age stuff. And Sandman Universe, Curtis really hinted at this, but I want to drive it home. We've never had a format of Sandman collections that treats the non-Neil Gaiman stuff with equal weight to the Gaiman stuff. And so, of course, if we cruise through the Neil Gaiman main 75 issues of Sandman, we would get something that we've had collected many times over. But a lot of those Sandman Presents miniseries that were offered as a way to extend the Sandman brand after the main series ended have never been recollected. Some of them didn't even get original trades. So this would be a chance to see them all under one banner for the first time. Dead Boy Detectives is really the only one, and Death, of course, that ever got their own shine. And then, of course, The Dreaming, which has its own 60 issues, has never been collected beyond, I think, an initial trade. So we confirm that DC, again, not permanent plans, but in terms of voting on lines, they would think of all of that as being under the umbrella of Sandman Universe. Of course, other things existed in the Sandman Universe, like Books of Magic, but as we've seen in Omnibus, that has enough material to exist on its own, as does Lucifer, which you've already seen both of in the options here.
I would be interested to see how they would map that Sandman universe compared to the way that they've done the Omnis and the Absolute editions. Just on my own curiosity. I mean, Overture is the prequel, but I know he came out afterwards. But I mean, surely, oh man, that is the one little weird
edge
but
yeah.
But that's also the Hellblazer thing that we talked about earlier, where as of right now we're looking at all of these lines and saying Flashpoint 2011 issue number 5 is the end point for all of these DC finest. We could see, okay, maybe in the future they might add 1 thing or 2 things, look at sales and all of that other hootie whatever. But as of right now, I think that they are content on keeping everything up until that Flashpoint issue number 5 as the last issue chronologically for this DC finest line.
If you vote for Sandman.
If you vote for Sandman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the question we were just talking about. It's got beautiful artwork though. Okay. Well done, Curtis. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. Crisis, your second favorite slide. I'm curious what your first favorite slide is. All right, so we're gonna move on to this slide. Is anybody's favorite slide?
Okay, let's go ahead and talk about more line options. If you are, listen, I know that we have had a lot of secret origins collected in some particular DC Finest. Like, for example, the Red Skies DC Finest specifically has a Roy Thomas story that features Batman. But if you want all of these secret origins, or hey, these are actual first or near first stories of these characters in one singular line, they are considering a line that runs from 1986, of course, which starts with Secret Origins issue number 1, from material up until 2008. Secret Six, this was one I also went back and forth with Crisis and Donovan over, well, what the heck does the Secret Six line look like? Because most people are familiar with the 2005 post-Infinite Crisis and Infinite Crisis version that Gail Simone and Nicholas Scott famously worked on for all of these years. Well, in looking back at some of DC history, we have seen earlier versions of some of these characters pop up, and we did conclude that lines before that 2005 series might eventually become its own thing. Well, not its own thing, but its own volume within this line. So these are going to be running from the years 1968 to 2011. But if you are voting for this, you are voting for Gail Simone's Secret Six to be in DC Finest format. We've already seen some of those issues in the DC Finest Wonder Woman Dawn Before Darkness trade paperback that came out a couple of weeks ago. But again, this is an internal vote for the Gail Simone, Nicholas Scott run. Secret Society of Supervillains. You've probably already seen these on the Tiger Eyes Most Wanted omnibus poll that we run every single year. You're going to be running from the years 1976 to 1979. Seven Soldiers of Victory. I remember actually chatting with somebody about this, and I asked them, would you ever be interested in reading Mr. Green Arrow's adventures with the original Seven Soldiers of Victory in the late 30s, early 40s? If you are interested in that, and also reading Star Spangled Kid, Crimson Avenger, Vigilante, or if you want a cheaper version of Grant Morrison's Clarion, Zatanna, etc., this is the line that you would want to vote for from 1938 to 2006. And Shade the Changing Man. If you're a big fan of the Steve Ditko version of the character, or the Peter Milligan version of the character, look no further. This is your spot to vote for that.
Okay. Well, that Seven Soldiers of Victory sounds so awesome. And I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is the Shadow Pact slide. This is the Bill Willingham book that kicked off post Infinite Crisis. And then we have Shazam, which include the Fawcett era and the entire Marvel family, which is very important because the character was so popular, it spun off into just different series. And my personal favorite, Starman, but we are looking at different Starmen. You've got Ted Knight, you've got Mikael Thomas, Will Payton, Jack Knight. So you have the Roger Stern stuff in there. You've got the James Robinson stuff. So going back all the way to the Golden Age. And, oh, man, what a freaking phenomenal line that would be. And we've got Steel. Mm-hmm. This is the stuff that spun out of the
Triangle era
of Superman.
Man
and Reign of Superman. And then Jess Bragg, if you're watching, my friend, for you. Sugar and Spike, a book I didn't even know about until I met Jess years ago. I'm like, what? That's not a book, but it is.
It is.
And here it is, 1956 to 1971.
Curtis, I have a question for you in particular because we just recently looked at or right now anyways, are looking at the Shazam 1940 to 2011. We know that the Golden Age comics are public domain. You're much more knowledgeable in this area of publishing than I think, well, definitely me, but I think maybe also for anybody who's listening, watching, etc. How does printing off those Fawcett comics work from a publishing standpoint if you were to reproduce those in a line like DC Finest?
Well, I mean, DC Finest has every right to do it along with everybody else in the world because they are public domain. Not all of them are public domain, just the ones that where the copyrights weren't renewed. So you'd have to do your research to make sure to find out. But since DC owns the property outright, they don't have to worry about that. They still own the trademark, so there's no problem putting Shazam right on the front cover, which other companies wouldn't be able to do unless they got a license. A lot of times publishers are wary of putting a lot of effort into restoring that stuff, the public domain material, because once those files are out there, then anybody can take those files and make their own version of the book, which I kind of think you can copyright the restoration, but I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, I mean, there's no problem for DC to do those issues at all, because they own the property, they own the IP. I mean,
Thank you for the explanation.
In Shazam, obviously, that would be a long-running line if you know that property well. It starts out in Wiz Comics, and then as Omar intimated, Shazam has a title, the Shazam family has a title, or Mary Marvel has a title, Captain Marvel Jr. has a title. So that would be an extensive line from the Golden Age, but it makes DC Finest is kind of the perfect way to do that, because it can jump around and give us different tastes of different portions of that as it gets restored. But let's not forget that there's also that absolutely outstanding Power of Shazam series that's in the 1990s that did very well in the DC Omnibus poll as well.
If I were to make one change to the Shazam, is I would like to spin off Captain Marvel Jr. into its own line, but I could see why they would rather, probably because of the Captain Marvel name, they can't market that the same way because of whatever
copyright naming
legal issues
conventions
there. Yeah, but yeah, that's good enough. They can put it in this one, and that's fine too.
They could call him Captain Redacted Jr., and everybody would know exactly.
Or hey, Freddie Freeman, like the baseball player.
All right.
Oh yeah,
No confusion there.
I totally get that reference about sports.
I hate this.
Wrong stream, Dom.
Dang
All right,
it! I'm sorry. I got too excited.
Two more of the SS with superpowers from 1984 to 1986. A short-lived line, but one that needs to be collected. Super Pets is another one from my buddy Jess Bragg, Omni Dog, 1948 to 1985. This is all the backup stories and the material from Crypto, the Super Dog, Streaky, the Super Cat, Beppo, Ace the Bat Hound, Streak the Wonder Dog, Rex the Wonder Dog. And Vigilante, another series from the 80s, but all the way into 2010. Warlord, which I know we've got one omnibus and a second one coming out later this year, but needs its own DC Finest. And then, of course, the Who's Who, which is kind of DC's handbook of the DC universe. It's had two omnis, and the Legion got their own little thing, but this would collect everything from 1985 to 2011, including all the updated material. And
I do want to point out
Go
one thing about Superpowers, because people are asking. Superpowers aligns with both a cartoon and a toy line of DC heroes. It's how a lot of us of a certain age were introduced to DC, and it just ran for a certain period, but there's some surprising stuff in there. I think there's some Jack Kirby issues of that, if I'm not totally mistaken, because some of them have been
a lot of Jack Kirby art in that one.
Yeah.
I figured that it would be folded into the Superpowers line. I mean, the Super Friends line, because they
Me too.
kind of are are one and the same.
Cross-concurrent, yeah.
No, DC was quite explicit with me that it should be a line of its own.
Explicit.
Not a problem.
Explicit, Curtis. Okay.
Not implicit.
Well,
Not-
a lot of swearing.
Yeah.
Don't make them mad, Curtis. All right.
I know something that won't
Paramount
make
might get angry. Okay, that's my only Paramount joke I'm allowed to make. Let's continue.
Oh,
All
he's
right.
ready. I know they're ready. They're ready. They're so ready for this.
Okay, what's the next one? I don't think anybody wants to talk about this slide more than me, probably. But you know what? Since I'm a gentleman,
We don't, Curtis or Crisis, go ahead.
what this is a professional.
Oh, you want me to go? Okay, sure. No. Go ahead, Crisis.
Sorry.
Are you serious, Curtis? You're in on that joke too? All right, buddy. It's 3 strikes. Go ahead.
Now,
Crisis.
early in the conversation with DC, when Milestone came up, I said, well, if we're talking about Milestone, of course, we saw the static book on the schedule, even though those static stories are not in DC continuity, but they're in a continuity adjacent to DC continuity. I said, what about Wildstorm? And you all know me. I was already ready with my complete list of every line option for Wildstorm. And DC's response was, we just don't know. but it would be great to understand how much interest there might be. So obviously, we're not necessarily talking about a Wildstorm compendium here that would include all of these things under one line. This Wildstorm titles is standing in for the fact that we could have a Wildstorm, a Wildcats, a Stormwatch, an Authority, a Gen 13, a Grifter, many different things. So this may be multiple lines. That exact note appears on the actual poll when you vote, so that you can be reminded, but there's, of course, a lot of Wildstorm that we could collect. World's Finest would be a line specifically collecting the team-ups that are specifically released under the headline World's Finest, and there were World's Finest that extended and miniseries with that name after Crisis. Young Heroes in Love is interesting, because I always love when people point out to me it's technically creator-owned, or at least creator participatory, which is why we have not seen it reprinted many times along the years. But if there was a high demand for it, could DC get that creator participation in line and print it here? They possibly could. Young Justice, of course, a major fan favorite that just got a second omnibus finally. We could see it in DC Finest as well. And Zatanna, who just got her first omnibus that collects all of her material that is not quite from post-crisis and onward, but from like 2000 and onward. But she's got some early material as well. That made it into the top 60 on the Tiger Eyes poll. It could also be perfect for a DC Finest, collecting all the material, both that are not in the omnibus already and that are in that forthcoming, or is it just come out omnibus?
Just came out a couple.
Just came out.
Yeah. So a couple of questions in the chat, and I'm gonna let you keep talking about this. Somebody was asking, where's Wonder Woman? These are lines that haven't existed, that don't exist. So we're going to get to Wonder Woman here in a little bit. We need Danger Girl. They cannot print that because well, I guess it depends on J. Scott Campbell, because he owns the rights to Danger Girl. And there was another one, which, where is it? World's, nope. Okay. Did you talk about Zatanna?
I did.
Okay. Does this mean the World's Finest will not be in Team Up's Finest?
Yes,
potentially not.
No, yeah, potentially not.
Yeah.
I think the main point with team ups is to have all of the double dynamic duos in series like The Brave and the Bold, or for other series or titles that had specific issues with two characters having fun with each other, trying to defeat the bad guy, or maybe are the bad guy in that particular series. World's Finest, at least from what I'm looking at, this is Batman and Superman, or any version of a Kryptonian and a human who is dressed like a freaky bat, and having those two together in one line.
Yeah.
Freaky bat.
Just while people are asking these questions, another one that I went to bat for and lost for now is Sovereign 7. That is not on here because that's another creator participatory.
Yeah, that's a Claremont thing. There was something else. Unknown Soldier, I think, belongs in the War. Finest.
Yeah.
And Dana, also Eisner Award nominated. Would Rip Hunter be under science fiction or action adventure? I would put Rick under time travel, right? So science fiction.
Wasn't that on the action slot, or am I mistaken? Because I remember seeing something about no. Do not take my word
Not
for
Rip
it,
Hunter.
Norman.
No, I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm not sure where Rip Hunter
You could put him in with Booster Gold and then confuse the hell out of everybody.
You know what? That is something that I could totally see them doing, considering that those two are pretty much intertwined after 52.
Yeah, not at the beginning. Really quick, we've got over 600 people watching. Please don't forget to hit that like button. A lot of work went into this. So
we're only halfway there, baby. So you better be living on a prayer, because now we got to be talking about all of the volume options. These are just the lines that don't exist yet. There are already 40 lines already in progress. They're all on my shelf here. I have every single book, because I know that Dom and Curtis and Omar all do as well. That's why we're on the stream together. So now we're going to talk about what you could be voting for in between each of the existing books. And again, these are two separate votes. You're voting in one poll, but it's like when you vote locally and you vote for like a mayor and then you vote for a governor, and the mayors are not running against the governors. It's kind of like that. You're voting two separate things on the poll. So Omar, let's start talking about volumes.
Okay. Thank you so much for that Bon Jovi reference, by the way.
Anytime.
All right. Aquaman starting again in alphabetical order. So if you're wondering where Martian Manhunter is, rewind. But
so
rewind,
let me just
hit
say,
that like button.
We're going to spend a lot of time on the A's, just like we did the first time, because this is going to help you understand how the poll works. So let's go to the slide and talk about it. So right now for Aquaman, we have one DC Finest volume in our hands. It is the King of Atlantis. Here it is. It's lovely. It collects his Silver Age material from 1957 to 1962. So now let's stop looking at my face and look back at the slides. So
Okay.
what we did here is we use this as a way to divide up the books. So the first thing we said, well, we could just say everything from before King of Atlantis and everything after King of Atlantis. If we did that, we would only have two options, because the only thing before King of Atlantis is the Golden Age. And you will see the note there. Volumes prior to King of Atlantis includes Adam Waterman. That would be from 1941 to 1956. Obviously, that would be multiple volumes to cover all of it. And then after this is a lot of years. It's 1962 all the way to 2011. We didn't want to give you just one option from 1962 all the way to 2011 because a lot of you have different preferences for different parts of the Aquaman history. So we broke that into eras based on how the character breaks apart. So you could choose to vote for Silver and Bronze Age volumes after King of Atlantis. You could choose to vote for post-crisis, which could include Atlantis Chronicles, Peter David, Larson, Dan Jurgens. And you could vote for his post-2000 stuff, which would include Aquaman, Sword of Atlantis. I want you to all get comfortable with this format now because we're going to see this again and again through 40 different lines. Anytime there is an adjacent book we can use, that book is in the wayfinding information, and they're all formatted exactly the same. It'll say volumes prior to, volumes after, or in some cases, when two existing volumes sandwich something that we're missing, volumes between. But this is how everything is broken out. It's meant for people who know the existing DC finest on their shelf or have been looking for something that those don't represent yet, so you can vote for a range. And again, these are a range. I cannot say it enough. A range of books. Some of these ranges would include 4, 5, 6. I think there's some in the poll that even would have 8 or 9 books in them. But you are voting for DC to crack into that period. You're not voting for a specific book in that period.
I would also like to say, just in accordance with the slide building, because this was also something that I tried to consider in giving you guys not only an accessible but readable preference and visual point of view, just in case if you are looking at the poll, you are very confused as to what you're voting for. So again, just like to explain my thought process on the line options, I would like to now quickly explain the volume option. So what you're looking at here, just like the line options, the most bolded title on the left-hand side, so you're looking at Golden Age, Silver, and Bronze Age, like Crisis mentioned, those are the actual options on the particular poll. So, for example, if you are very interested in reading post-crisis Aquaman, you're going to be voting for Aquaman post-crisis. And with that wayfinding viewpoint down at the bottom, which is always at the end of the poll, and just like the line options, we have the years concurrent running on the right-hand side, so you know exactly what you're trying to tell DC when you vote for something. So 1941, 1956, if you're interested in reading Adam Waterman material, that is going to be the years that you're looking at. And just like the line options, I've also included a cover or a panel from a particular comic that most represents the era or book that you want and are looking to vote for.
Nice choice with that Jim Aparo.
So now that we've explained it all, there will be a quiz, and let's see which character we're going to be quizzing you on. The next one is
Batgirl.
Now this one is a lot more complicated than some of you might think. So let's look at the Batgirl options. We have a Batgirl volume on the shelf. It is Nobody Dies Tonight. However, Batgirl is a character that has multiple different people who have occupied the identity. So let's talk about the options here. We don't have any Barbara Gordon Batgirl volumes yet, and she has a lot of material. We've seen her in Omnibus, and she has a lot of pre-crisis material. Maybe it would even collect a little bit of her pre-Birds of Prey Oracle material before Cass takes over. Then we needed Cassandra Cain Volume 1. And I'm not going to talk through all 4 of these. Other people will get their turn. Curtis is collecting and reading all these books, but I want to explain how we did things. In this case, we know there's only one volume of Cassandra Cain there can be. In fact, I could probably tell you every issue that will go in it because it's explicitly outlined by where this one we currently have starts. So in that case, you'll notice we were wise enough that the wayfinding comment there says volume, singular, prior to Nobody Dies Tonight, because there's only one. You're going to see that happen a few more times in the poll. Wonder Woman has an example like that. Green Lantern has examples like that. Then, or maybe Justice League. Then there's the rest of Cassandra Cain, volumes after Nobody Dies Tonight. And then Stephanie Brown, a final volume before Flashpoint.
So I think you explained that really well. Because we're not doing eras for Cassandra. She already has one volume release. So what we're doing is the volume prior to Nobody Dies Tonight and volumes after to finish out the series. If you're a big Cassandra Cain fan, you know that they never finished collecting her in trade paperback, and they tried 2 different times. So,
and I think that's a great question, though, because on other polls, we might just talk about like a whole range or an era. On this poll, you will always have the option to decide if you want to vote for something that's before or after a current book on yourself. There's no option on this poll that's like books around, books on either side of. No, it's always about, do you want something that came before this, or do you want something that came after this?
Technically, yes. Stephanie Brown could be those 2 books, and they could rebrand them.
You know what? I think they could also add the 5-issue Cassandra Cain series to that. We're looking at, DC obviously can map something completely different from what we have. Again, this is just based on our interpretation of what we are looking at with these particular characters. They have the final say as to what they could also include. If they are also willing to add other cameos or other appearances of Stephanie Brown outside of her 2009 run on Batgirl, they are also totally open to doing that too. It isn't just, it's only going to be what we collected before. They're looking at all of this comprehensively to make sure that you guys have the most complete reading experience and shelf experience when you're looking at any of these DC finest.
So people are going to get so confused with this. That's why we're here, and we're doing it live so we can answer the questions before you go and vote. Also, vote for Fabian ECSS, Superjob's favorite writer. All right, I am going to move on.
It's your moment, Omar. Now that Dom and I set it up for you, now it's all your time to shine.
Oh, is it more Nightwing? Okay. All right. We are going to be talking about Batman.
Nightwing. Rewind for Nightwing, guys.
All the rules have been established. If you have any more questions, please, now's the time to ask. And one of these kind folks will be happy to answer you in the chat. Or unless people are really paying attention, really, really, truly paying attention, they can answer you in the chat. So we are looking at the Golden Age. These are volumes that come out after the Case of the Chemical Syndicate. And then there's Silver Age until the New Look era in 1964. Silver Age is broken down into the New Look now. So volumes prior to the Demon Lives Again, starting with Detective Comics 327. Bronze Age is the 70s. So this is between the Demon Lives Again and Curse of Crime Alley.
I would also like to add real quick, because this was something that we did consult with the folks over at DC. They decided to split Silver Age into 2 particular DC finest eras or volumes, just to see if they could get an explanation as to if people want the first half of this particular era of Batman. So if you are a big fan of Rainbow Batman, if that is your crazy shtick, that is something you want to vote for. If you're not a big fan of, say, that, and you want something more akin to whatever's in the second half material, that is the line that you are voting for. That is the difference between the regular Silver Age and New Look.
If you're not familiar with the New Look, if you look at actually, Dom chose some really good pictures. You see the Golden Age Batman and Silver Age Batman have a very similar look, but when you get into the New Look, he has the yellow utility belt and the emblem's a little bit different. So we're going to move on because those are just 4 of the choices. We got more Batman to cover. This is the Bronze Age pre-crisis 1980. So now it's the volumes between Curse of Crime Alley and Red Skies, and the post-crisis early 90s. These are volumes after Blind Justice and prior to Nightfall. This is huge. So this is where you're hearing it first. This will collect Batman Shadow of the Bat. So not only are you getting Detective Comics and Batman in one line, you're getting Shadow of the Bat. So if you're looking at those 4 trade paperbacks, they're not going to continue that line. This is what they're hoping to replace that line. So there you go. That's a wonderful decision that was made by DC, and we're able to share with everyone. We're moving on to the late 90s. This is the event era where one event, as I talked about last week, leads into the next one. So Nightfall to No Man's Land. The early to mid 2000s, this is the new Gotham with Brubaker and also people like Greg Rucka, to the pre-Dini Morrison era. And then the late aughts, Dini Morrison, the Flashpoint. Now, if you're wondering, why is there so much Batman? We know that they are doing 5 Batman books a year. That's why we added so much Batman here. So why Aquaman only has 4 different eras to vote for. How many Aquaman DC finest do we have?
We only got 1 so far. Sorry.
Yes, just one. No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
It was
Okay.
rhetorical, but that's okay.
wait.
We like the excitement.
If I could go to a question that John
Yeah, go
678
ahead.
asks,
Click it.
aren't they already doing the collected Morrison books currently? The Morrison books are only collecting Morrison written titles. So, for example, if they were on Batman, Batman and Robin, excerpts from Batman Incorporated, that is that specific line. What DC Finest is looking at is not only the specific Grant Morrison written issues, they're also looking to collect all of the Detective Comics issues. And as you start to get into the late 2009s, you're going to see titles like Batman Streets of Gotham, well, actually not Batman Confidential, but you're looking at all of the Batman material that they are looking to place and map in. It's not just Grant Morrison. You're looking at Judd Winnick. You're looking at Tony S. Daniel on a real quick stint of Batman, David Hine, the latter issues of Batman and Robin, including that Patrick Gleason and Peter J. Tomasi 3-issue White Knight story that's all collected in there. It's not specifically just under one creator. It's every single Batman issue from 2006 to 2011 that you're going to be voting for that comprehensive line for DC Finest.
And I need to, for people that are new to collecting this, it's a huge deal because this kind of sums up how I feel about it. So we would get Heart of Hush alongside Batman RIP. So peak. Yes, so peak. Like legit. It's never been collected like that. You've had to have, I mean, obviously that line also hasn't been properly collected either fully, but to have it all in one place in a proper reading order, oh my gosh.
And we're going to get that. Yeah, we're going to get that.
Amazing.
That famous panel maybe from Final Crisis issue number 6 where something happens to Batman and we get some again, getting to see Dick Grayson as Batman and Robin, and also flipping off from detective to Batman and back and forth. It's going to be a nightmare to map, but it's also going to be something that I think is really cool. And we've never seen anything like that before from DC. And I think that is one of the best things specifically about this line.
And I need to stress one last thing. It's huge that a publisher is sharing this information with us. Most publishers are pretty hush-hush about mappings and future mappings and what they have planned because they want to keep people surprised or they save it for marketing. It is huge that they're letting people know ahead of time that this is what they want to do. And you get to choose what books you want. That's amazing. So just, to be a part of it. And
I mean, it was a huge conversation, a weeks-long conversation about if we should mention Shadow of the Bat on here, because it's huge news for all of us. And I also want to, I love to make fun of Omar. It's one of the reasons I'm here. Omar has great instincts for this thing because he knows what we all care about. Like, nobody is deeper into this than Omar. And like the celebrations you're having in the chat are the celebrations that Omar was having privately with us a month ago when we were working this out. But I also want to point out that it's not just that there's a lot of Batman and they put a lot of volumes. With Batman, each of these eras has a very specific interest for people. In terms of the stuff after Curse of Crime Alley and before Red Skies, it's extremely undercollected. In terms of the post-crisis early 1990s, it's a chance to get Shadow of the Bat integrated. In terms of, like, I think Omar kind of hit. And so part of why we broke some of these things out into eras further than the book divides is because we know there is unique interest in different parts of the eras. And you'll see that again on Superman. You'll see it in Justice League. It's some of the bigger titles have more eras than the smaller ones.
Well, for sure. I mean, getting Batman Incorporated, Black Mirror, and that within one. Oh my God, man!
Yeah, somebody mentioned that. That's oh my God. Yeah,
that's crazy.
You know what's funny? I was waiting for this slide when people earlier were like, "I'm not gonna waste my vote on any Batman books." Now it's like, crap. I want different Batman eras to be truly collected in the way God intended it to be collected. Yeah, it's tough, but
it's a kid's like dream, man, just to see this all unfold. Okay, that's all I have to say. I can.
Curtis, any thoughts on Batman? Do you like Batman?
I've heard of that guy, but I'm really a Marvel fan, so like, it's kind of like Moon Knight, right?
Little like Moon Knight, yeah. Little like Moon Knight. Well said.
We want to thank you for the super chat, MP, who I know is one of the biggest Batman fans out there. Let me tell you, I don't know many people who are more Batman-y fan than he is. Imagine being able to read Heart of Hush Not rest in peace. R.I.P. Final Crisis, Last Rites, Battle for the Cowl, Batman Reborn, Return of Bruce Wayne, and Batman Incorporated all together back to back. Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's
Rotten Purgatory, man.
and properly mapped, right? Yeah.
That's going to be like maybe months, like 1 or 2 months of some of these volumes and how big they'll be.
Oh, and all the fighting amongst the collected editions department.
Oh, I can't
What
wait.
goes where? I'd love it. Batman almost eats his own pole. Yeah, no kidding, right?
I know. All right, I think that's all I have to say on Batman.
Okay, we're gonna move on to Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle.
Curtis, what are we going to be voting for here with Blue Beetle?
Well, there's Blue Beetle has a number of different identities, and so we've broken them down into the specific identity eras. So the Golden and Silver Age is Dan Garrett. This is the stuff that's come after the volume that we already have, and then the volume that comes before the volume that we already have, the Dan Garrett era. And then there's the Bronze Age and post-crisis Ted Kord stuff, which is probably the biggest era of Blue Beetle, which comes after the volume that we already have. And then there's the Jaime Reyes volume or era that comes way more modern toward the beginning of the right before Flashpoint. Yeah, so I know that everybody has their favorite Blue Beetle. So this is going to be broken down in this way specifically for people who are wanting to collect this very specific character.
And all different types of characters, not even being printed at DC at one time. And then, of course, post-crisis being a DC character.
We need that 1986 reprinted, man. I would totally.
Oh, no, man.
Put a vote for that post-crisis era for Blue Beetle.
I mean, if I can just nerd out about DC Finest for a second, the great thing is they picked such a great length. They're longer than the showcase volumes. So like these 30-issue series that we used to despair that we would never be able to get in trades because it would be 3 trade paperbacks and it wouldn't sell enough. Now some of these series we're looking at getting knocked out in like single DC Finest or 2 DC Finest that also encompass all of the guest stars and crossovers and stuff in that era. It's a dream come true. I've waited my whole comic collecting existence to be able to have stuff like this. That's why they're all on my shelf. Once DC communicated to the fans, like, no, we're serious. And I think that to me came from looking at the mapping of the first couple Batman and Catwoman ones where I was like, oh man, they're really doing it perfectly in order. I could not be more hyped. It's as exciting as any line from any publisher from me right now. And I know Blue Beetle is a weird side to be having this emotional meltdown on, but like just the fact that, like Dom said, we could get that whole series in 2 DC Finest is crazy.
So happy.
Yeah, we're living in some amazing times for collected editions. And Curtis, you get to experience it all for the first time.
I know.
Me too. Curtis, I'm with you. I've never read most of this before the Finest volumes get to my house, other than Wonder Woman.
I mean, there wasn't a lot collected back in the day. I mean, outside of Jaime Reyes, that was it. Catwoman, not a lot, but what are we looking at, Crisis?
Well, this one's really easy to explain because there's 2 obvious groups of Catwoman. One is that we can continue the existing line, and the newest one in that line that's been announced is Creatures of the Night. So we could have volumes after that to continue her original series. Then Ed Brubaker takes over in 2001, and that also includes Will Pfeiffer's run. So it's why it says by Ed Brubaker and on. We didn't want to break it into 2 because this is not like the omnibus poll where we're specifically looking to splinter things apart. I think with Catwoman, these are 2 obvious eras. You either want more of the 90s Catwoman or you want them to crack into the 2000s Catwoman. And of course, after the Ed Brubaker and on, she moves on to Gotham City Sirens.
No pre-crisis.
Yes, no pre-crisis. There's relatively limited Catwoman stories before Crisis. And because of where that first Catwoman volume Lifelines begins with the immediately post-crisis stuff, she would need to have enough to fill a whole additional book. Now, the great thing about the DC Finest line is there's no volume number on this. So if at some point they really wanted to collect a bunch of her double Batman material from before Crisis, they certainly could. But Catwoman material will generally be in the Batman line from before Crisis.
And if you are interested in Before Crisis and you want a little sampler of that, definitely get Batman Red Skies. It's got the
Yes.
costume.
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic. I love Doug Mensch. I love Gene Colan, and it's something that you guys should check out immediately.
Isn't it just one more? Oh, sorry about that. I clicked on the wrong one. Isn't it just like one more volume after Creatures to complete the first option? You're talking about the Jim
Post-Crisis.
Ballant one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Post-Crisis had pre-boot.
that went on for a while.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's
There's
a
a
lot
lot.
more before he got revamped.
I think at least two. I think at least two for Post-Crisis, or that specific viewpoint.
We invite your questions, though. There's times that we could get it wrong, but this is actually, I think it's important to say that we didn't just write all these down with our hot little fingers. We actually built a whole database of information that would programmatically pull what is the prior volume, is it volume or volumes, and all that stuff. So there's a chance that we made mistakes. You guys caught that we made a mistake and ended the year range on Cassandra Cain's era too early. I've already fixed that on the poll, but definitely keep asking your questions. It's good to know. But just so you know, like we're kind of out of the realm of typos. This is all kind of generated programmatically for us.
Where would Catwoman When in Rome fit? Here or Legends of the Dark Knight with the Long Halloween?
Why can't you have
Great
both?
question.
Probably
Why can't
both.
you?
Yeah,
I think that's another cool thing about the DC Finest line is that I know that you typically want to not kill your sales with seeing, oh, it's two of the same book, but if there is something that manages to fit in one thing that also fits in another volume, it's nice to see that DC is not afraid of putting it in two separate volumes for their lines if it makes sense to do so. And I don't think there's any issue with that.
Yeah. And one final comment on Catwoman. We're at issue 53 currently. Her series continues to issue 94. So that's why it would be multiple volumes to get to the end of the first half here.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the... Actually, no. Is that your call or DC's call for Catwoman's pre-Crisis? I would have thought it'd get one like the Joker. I think it's what Crisis has stated, though, about the material. But at the end of the day, yeah, it is absolutely DC's call whether they make one or not. They totally can.
Generally, you'll see that we're averse to listing books that would be primarily double dip, because in the few times that we went to DC with a specific question about that, like, can we have the Teen Titans Nightwing stuff? The answer is a very specific Nightwing starts at Action Comics. So rather than torture DC with a question every time we had one like that of like, ooh, could we have selected solo material before Crisis? The answer tended to, we assume, be no. Joker is different because Joker had his own 10-issue solo series. Catwoman didn't have that. So to be able to collect that in Finest, they had to also double dip stuff out of the Batman line. Does that mean there'll never be a pre-Crisis Catwoman? No, but there's a lot of other books to vote for here.
Facts. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide, which is Dead Man and the Demon. These are two up your alley, Curtis, because they're older books.
Dead Man is actually the book that I'm in the middle of reading right now. And it's been wonderful.
Take that, Omar.
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
knew that. I knew that because that's why I said that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Curtis.
No, so yeah, that volume is called How Many Times Can a Guy Die? And so there's going to be volumes before that, and then there will be volumes after that. So you can see the pretty clear division of those two for Demon, and then the same, or for a Dead Man, and the same goes for Demon as well. Sorry, that's not true. The volume of the Demon that we got is the first volume. So everything is coming after that. There's a distinct line between the post-Crisis stuff and the 2000s, the driven out story all the way to Flashpoint. So two distinct eras for each of those characters that you can vote for.
Tell DC to just print all these. Well, I'll tell you what, if they keep selling, if you all just keep buying,
They will.
Yeah, they will. They just want to know what to do first.
So I really stress. I know I said this on my Saturday stream, but I'm going to say it again. Get everyone that is getting the DC Finest to vote, please, because we want to know, what people really want, and more importantly, DC wants to know what people really want. So it's important that people come out and vote and show just strengthening numbers. Right? It may surprise you what will end up in the top poll. Any other thoughts on this stuff? This is, of course. I love that Dom loves Boston so much. He used them in two different slides here.
Yes, because we have two different eras of Dead Man to vote for, Omar.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, good call. Any other thoughts on this?
By the way, they're only on the same slide because they're two with two clearly divided, very similarly divided lines. They have no relation to each other. They're both their own title line.
And
The
that's why we got the covers. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
They're
right.
pretty visually distinct from each other, even if they're striking a similar pose there. Great voguing, different characters.
Oh, the Doom Patrol. Oh man, I love the
How many
world's
of these do we have so
weirdest superheroes.
far?
We only have two. We have the Silver Age first
Mhm.
volume, and we have the upcoming volume that collects the rest of the Silver Age and the first portions of the Bronze Age, with a totally not spoiler cover that I spoiled when we got to talk about it on the Idolized catalog stream.
And we have one announced that's coming out later.
Yes, indeed, and
Yeah.
that is the. We'll get to talking about that volume because something internally communication wise happened that I think is a funny story to recall Crisis. First of all, the first book that you can vote for is Bronze Age to Pre-Morrison. This is pretty simple. This goes from the end of the Death of Doom Patrol DC Finest trade paperback up until the Paul Kupperberg year. So we're looking from 1979 up until Doom Patrol issue number 18 when they relaunched the title after Flashpoint. And the big one that most people probably know, and you'll probably see a very similar mapping between this, the omnibus, and also the thick trade paperbacks that we've gotten that maybe could be compressed into two just because of how big those DC Finest have been for Doom Patrol. These are the Morrison years. So Morrison, Richard Case, Introduction to Crazy Jane, starting with issue number 19 of the Doom Patrol. If that is your jam and you don't want the thicker trade paperbacks, you want it in its own specific DC Finest format line, this is the vote you would get. And these are the volumes prior to The End Sanctifies the Means, which is the Rachel Pollack entire series that is going to be printed much later this year. You also have the 2000s. So these are eras that span from creators like John Arcudi, John Byrne, and Keith Giffen. These are the volumes after The End Sanctifies the Means, when we are out of the spinning Vertigo continuity that they put Doom Patrol in when Rachel Pollack started writing the title. And these are going to be from the years 2000 to 2011. And if I may quickly tell the story that happened internally, both the DC editor and Crisis had the title mixed up because of what it was originally called on Penguin Random House and Edelweiss. And I emailed Crisis maybe last night, and I said, wait a second. This isn't the title of this book. The original title that we got confused was The End Sacrifices the Means. That's what it was labeled on Penguin Random House. And I said, wait, that's not the title. The title of the book is actually The End Sanctifies the Means. So we had to switch it up very quickly in light of the stream. But I just thought the even the DC editor that we talked to was like, wait a second, that's not the
Sanctifies.
book. Yeah. Sanctifies.
All right, let's continue to
The events. These are huge.
There's a lot. Oh my gosh.
So
let me
Go
just
ahead.
set this up and then you talk about it, Omar, because you know this stuff so well. I just want to point out that we've seen DC crack into events, and even when the events are different, the spine title of the line is events. So we've had Crisis on Infinite Earths. We have part 1 and part 2, and part 3 solicited waiting for part 4. We have 0 Hour and 2. So the assumption is DC will keep doing that. So, but the events, we've not seen any indication yet that 2 events could occupy the same book. And so we've treated each event as if it would be its own book. And I think that makes sense because all of them have at least some tie-ins that would get them to DC Finest length. So from there, Omar, please take it away.
somebody said Invasion minus the X-Men. Yeah, I was gonna say this is the stuff, and we got it in chronological order as it was released. Some early Todd McFarlane stuff, some Keith Giffen stuff, some John Byrne stuff in there, and of course wrapping up Crisis on Infinite Earths with a volume 4. Millennium and Invasion, I don't think would take as actually. Millennium might take as much as Legends.
Yeah.
Invasion actually may take a little bit more because those books were thicker, but there were only. No, maybe not.
If I may quickly get to a question,
sorry.
yes. Part 3 of Crisis on Infinite Earths is coming out on the 17th of November, if my brain recalls correctly. So we have one in the works. Obviously, things could shift, might get delayed. But as of right now, we have 3 titles from DC, or 3 volumes from DC specifically for Crisis on Infinite Earths.
So again, I need to relay why would you vote for on Crisis 4 like they'd stop now. Vote for the books you want. even if you think they're coming out, DC doesn't like it's not a sure thing. Sales might have dipped with volume 3 and they're like, you know what, let's just wait on volume 4 for a couple of years. Vote for the books you want. Then we've got Armageddon 2001, never been collected in any kind of format, and don't you at me with there's a reason for that. It's great. Monarch's the Man. War of the Gods, which is the crossover that wraps up the George Perez era on Wonder Woman, and then the Eclipse of the Darkness Within, another that has been, some of the issues have been collected here and there. Be really cool to get the diamond on the cover, but that ain't happening. And then, of course, the Bloodlines, which introduce so many characters, new characters to the DC line, including characters like Hitman.
Yeah, and we've got some of those Bloodlines annuals collected. Like one of those annuals is going to be collected in the upcoming Superman Triangle Years era Omnibus Volume 3, but not in the the way that I think most people would want them, all in one.
And we're not done because we have a lot more. Again, this is all done in a chronological order. Great. That's awesome that Dom did it that way. Underworld Unleashed only been collected in a trade, but not fully collected. Same thing with Final Night because these were crossover events. And then Genesis, that's another one by Byrne when he came back. And DC 1 Million, which has had an omnibus, but it would be interesting to see how the DC Finest would be mapped. And we've got Day of Judgment, another one that a lot of these have had just one trade paperback, just collecting the main event. Our Worlds at War, we know that they're going through the omnis of that. And then Joker, The Last Laugh, which is part of the Nightwing Compendium Volume 3, but it would be cool to see all of Joker, The Last Laugh collected with all the tie-ins and a proper mapping order. And then Identity Crisis, which was an event, and it would be interesting to see how they decide to map that one too.
If I may, could I take this slide, Omar, because I have some stuff to say about this one specifically.
Yeah, go ahead.
Infinite Crisis, so you're looking at something that would be much more comprehensive than the actual omnibus mapping that we have, like more than what we have in the omnibus. You're looking at, just like Crisis on Infinite Earths, a multi-volume line that would take us from issue number 1 or even before that to issue number 7 with all of the appropriate tie-ins. 52, and I'll get to this one in a bit. Obviously, you know this as the 1 year lost, whatever happened into the 1 year later that was never fully uncovered. All of these creators that you see on their screen, they had something to say about that. So you're following all of these adventures, but I'll get to that in a minute. Countdown to Final Crisis, which was a series written by Paul Dini that featured Kyle Rayner, Donna Troy. Most people typically don't like to talk about that series, but if you're somebody who's interested in reading DC's interpretation of, hey, this is what's going to happen before Grant Morrison has Darkseid and the Fourth World collapse all on top of one another, that is something you should check out. And Trinity, the Busiek and Nisi, is a weekly series from 2008 to 2009, and as the last one for the 52 weekly series. And I bring this up because we have omnibus and the thick trade paperback and the thinner trade paperbacks all having different collected material. So for example, the thinner trade paperbacks, they collected the backup stories that were featured in 52. So in 52, you had the main story, which was obviously, hey, this is what's happening in Conduct. This is what's happening in Gotham City. So what's happening all over the world in the DC universe. But the omnibus and the thick trade paperbacks do not have those backup stories collected in them. And it would be really nice if we could get, just like in the events line, a 52 series that actually collected what those thinner trade paperbacks had, getting those backups in ways that we don't have for the $175 omnibus or the thicker trade paperbacks, as I mentioned.
Throw in World War III, and baby, you got yourself a stew. Let's see here. This is a question from Epic Marvel Podcast. Don't know who that is. Would Final Crisis be included in Countdown to Final Crisis? That's a good question. I'm going to let Curtis, why don't you take that one?
Well, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so it looks like the events are going to be Final Crisis, Blackest Night and Brightest Day, and Flashpoint.
Yes. Is that what you wanted to add? Here's a really I'm curious about this because the Flashpoint omnibus was collected almost in a publishing order. would you all say the Flashpoint DC Finest? How would those be collected to be different than the mapping that they use for the Omni?
I think that they would have their own reading order, just exactly like the Crisis on Infinite Earths DC Finest that they are placing out. Even the Legends DC Finest that we got a chance to talk about on the channel when DC shared that information with us, they specifically said that DC Finest events would have your actual made-to-read reading order for this particular line. So I could totally see them doing an actual, okay, like let's reevaluate and see where all of these random 3-issue series would actually slot, including Ab and Sur, actually slot within the pages of Flashpoint. It doesn't just extend there. Obviously, we've had the New Gods is going to have a different reading order. I think they are going to make this experience as deep and as goodly or well different as possible.
Okay. Does Major Bummer have a place in the poll? I'd like to get it in the Lux, but have a lot of doubts. I don't know where we would put him in the poll. Did we have a place for him? Is that a character we talked about?
I unfortunately am not familiar with Sir Bummer.
It's not a lot of material, but I'm curious as to where we would even put him. All right.
I've got a running list of questions, so next time I chat with them, I will find out.
Well, it looks like we're already getting an email from some of the questions being answered. The Flash. All right. Who wants to talk about the Flash?
Well, I think I'm the fastest talker, so I'll take it. The Golden Age, Jay Garrick. This is some of DC's most under-collected material when it comes to one of their kind of headline iconic heroes. It's never been all collected sequentially. This would be volumes prior to the Human Thunderbolt, which is, of course, the demarcation of the start of the Silver Age, not only for DC, but really industry-wide, with a few exceptions. And so this would be any volumes compiling Jay Garrick. Then we enter the Silver Age for Barry Allen, volumes between the Human Thunderbolt and the Fastest Man Dead, which very conveniently kind of marks the line between these two ages, because then we can pick up after Fastest Man Dead and take all the way to Crisis on Infinite Earths. That's 15 years versus Flash, which of course, some of which we have in Omnibus. Then we have post-crisis Wally West, starting from 1987, again, some of which we've already seen collected, but not all. And then if we continue to the next slide, we will continue actually just one more into the 2000s. And I know there's a lot of Flash in the 2000s, but in terms of an era where you might want to place your votes in order to see it collected, we just treat it as one big decade of Flash. Clearly, multiple different Flashes hold the mantle during that period.
Including Bart Allen, where you might get a chance to read some of those pre-Infinite Crisis and post-Infinite Crisis tie-ins, and the Lost Years with Mark Waid, Roger Cruz, before Barry comes back in 2008, Flash Rebirth.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that hasn't been collected outside of the Jeff Johns material, like the Catherine Eminem material's never been collected in any format. Plus, it's got some phenomenal stories. Can't get enough of the Flash. Fourth World, here we go. With Jack Kirby's Bronze Age, this is the volumes after when the old gods die. And then there's post Bronze Age Kirby, 1973 to 1987. The post-crisis. So this is the stuff that comes after Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then when John Burns comes in and says, hold my beer, I'm going to Jack Kirby the crap out of this. With Walter Simonson with Orion. That's the 1996 to 2011 era. I assume that would include Death of the New Gods by Starlin.
Yep, and maybe this is definitely just me shooting into the wind. You could even add an excerpt from Final Crisis issues number 2 through 3.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Right? I love the fact that Jim Starlin was like, nobody told me they were doing that in Final Crisis. I was just doing my own thing. But I mean, if you're a purist like Josh is, they've already released that material in absolute format. If you just want the Jack Kirby stuff, this would be stuff that would be for people that want everything, right?
And
that's the beauty of this line.
And I want to reiterate what I sort of mentioned earlier with the different reading order that they're doing for all of these collected editions versus absolutes or even omnibuses. we're getting a New Gods line, or sorry, Fourth World line, starting with New Gods issue #1 for the upcoming DC Finest that's coming out later this month. And that to me speaks to the not only the level of dedication that they're placing in with some of these books, but also in the fact that some of this is, again, just is the way that they want you to read this material. You're not kicking it off with Darkseid's first appearance in the pages of Jimmy Olsen. You're kicking it off with, oh wow, we're in a completely different world than the one that we're used to. So I just want to reiterate that for everybody who is looking at these and going, oh, they're, maybe similar, maybe not. This is a completely new experience that they really, really want you guys to be a part of.
Curtis, I'm curious, have you read any of this stuff, buddy? I know you've heard about it. It's classic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've read maybe the first half of the Fourth World series, and then honestly, I got tired of it, and so I stopped. But as they come out in the DC Finest, I will continue on, because Dom holds me accountable to reading all of them.
Hey, he does the same with me.
He's your DC Finest sponsor. Interesting. Okay. What is this? Isis. What do we got here?
Well, before we dig into, you brought it up in stream perfectly. So live updates from DC, they're watching, they're everywhere. It's like OMAC, eye in the sky. So updates from DC, Rip Hunter, some of you had questions about earlier, that will be in the science fiction line. Doom Patrol is in fact 2 volumes before Martian. I had it just as 1, but I'm not the mapper. DC is, they say 2. Hellblazer would in fact include 2013. It'll be updated on the actual poll when you vote on it momentarily. And DC Challenge, which is an early DC event, would be in the Team Ups line.
So look at that. You guys are already getting updates.
How crazy is that?
Where else do you get?
We're not playing around here.
Live updates. Come on now.
This is the first poll I think we've ever had that's had live updates like that, which is crazy.
All right, we're going to move on to the next slide, the Green Arrow slide. All right, Dom, why don't you talk us through these, please?
Actually, I'd like to take the Green Lantern side. Crisis, I think you're much more equipped for the Emerald Archer.
I love talking about Green Arrow. So Golden Age Green Arrow, we just recently had an omnibus of the beginning of it, but there is more material enough for a second omnibus, and so plenty for multiple DC Finest. We really don't have a lot to demarcate where this breaks up right now, because the only Green Arrow that we have is kind of 2 volumes that are in the Grell era. So Silver Age would be material prior to Lantern Arrow together. Bronze Age would be volumes after Lantern and Arrow, including Lantern and Arrow, up through Longbow Hunters. So that includes Lantern and Arrow and surrounding solo backups, probably also including Black Canary there. And then we have Mike Grell. We've got 2 Mike Grell volumes already, Trial of Oliver Queen and Longbow Hunters. So that would be everything after the Trial of Oliver Queen to the end of Mike Grell. If we go to the next slide, then we divided Connor Hawk into his own era per demand by Omar. He always demands Connor Hawk get his due. And then we have the 2000s, which would include a lot of different things. Quiver, Archer's Quest, all the way to Flashpoint, which of course includes the wedding of Black Canary and Green Arrow in it as well.
Or if you're a maniac like me, you could get Cry for Justice in that specific era of DC Finest.
I got flamed enough for my Cry for Justice mapping during the omnibus poll. I am staying silent on all matters related to Cry for Justice.
Guys, Cry for Justice wasn't that bad. All right, real talk though. Connor Hawk, the reason I wanted it split up is because the stuff that we would have looped it under would be the Mike Grell stuff, right? Like the Mike Grell Longbow Hunters era, post Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yep.
The problem with looping it in like that is the Connor Hawk stuff has never been collected in any format. So I want DC to get the clear notice that, oh, that's an era that would be really cool to finally get out there in a collected edition format. And I'm going to get this really nice super chat from DJ Michael White. This is the best pull stream this year. The year's not over yet. Thank you so much, though. That was really kind, really kind. Was Cry for Justice the one with Arsenal and the dead? It was.
I think that's a signal to move on, Omar.
It's the return of Prometheus. That guy was badass, man. Am I really moving on? Is that all we got to say about Green Arrow? Anybody? I mean, the stuff.
Curtis, I know you're a big fan, just like me, of the Mike Grell era of Green Arrow.
Correct. No, I mean, I would take any of this stuff. The Green Arrow, I mean, I just haven't read any of it. So, but I'm so happy that the what's it, the Denny O'Neil stuff is coming up soon, because I haven't read that either. So that's going to be very, very exciting. But yeah, I mean, I'd vote for some Silver Age stuff too.
Awesome. Blitz Curtis patiently waiting to talk about that. He had his spiel earlier. All right, we're gonna move on to.
He's a Finest guy now. Relationship with Epic's ended. Now Finest is his best friend.
Breaking
No.
news.
It's ridiculous.
They're not wrong.
He loves all of his children equally.
All right, we're gonna go to Green Lantern now. All right,
Oh,
who wanted it?
I wanted this slide because there is a lot of Green Lanterns to talk about, and I know that a lot of you guys were asking about John Stewart, Guy Gardner, and Kyle Rayner. This is where you're going to have your opportunities to get it in. And I just wanted to echo something that Crisis and I mentioned multiple times earlier in the stream. They view all of these franchises like Atom, like Blue Beetle, like Manhunter, even in the line options, as one particular set. So, for example, if John Stewart is over here rigging and slinging with his Green Lantern ring, then that means he's going to be in the Green Lantern line. He's not going to have his own line. We've already seen this with what would be effectively the third Silver Age volume with the DC Finest Green Lanterns, where we got to see the first appearance of Guy Gardner. So naturally, this is where all of your Green Lanterns, not even just the Earth Lanterns. Somebody asked about Gnort earlier. Somebody, I'm sure, will mention the Planet Mogo later. The Planet Mogo is going to be in this line. I just want to quickly clear that up before we get into this particular DC Finest. And as most of you might know, Alan Scott is not a member of the Corps, but he did.
Hashtag not a real Green Lantern. Go on.
The man who is very weak to wood is unfortunately a part of this line because he did have the insignia of Green Lantern, even though again he was not part of the Corps, as that was not made until way later. Those were the years from 1940 to 1949. Silver Age Hal Jordan Volume 1. So this is the volume prior to the defeat of Green Lantern, where, of course, Mr. Hal Jordan shows up for the first time in chronological order. So again, you are voting for that specific volume. Just again to echo, like the Cassandra Cain Volume 1. I think you guys have a pretty good idea of what would be collected in this particular volume. If that is something that you're missing on your shelf and you want DC to print that out, that is the volume that you're looking for. The same material that's been printed in omnibus format, showcase, etc. We also have the Bronze Age version of Hal Jordan. This would include volumes after Hard Traveling Heroes, which is coming out later this year, Solo, and with Green Arrow. So there might be, I know we talked about this earlier too with the double dipping. If you don't care about Green Arrow, but you want to read Green Lantern, there's a lot of intersection there. So naturally, there is going to be some crossover between that and also with Green Arrow. So if that is something that you're looking into, be sure to vote for that. It also will probably have the first appearance of the man that I just mentioned earlier, John Stewart, in this volume. Pre-Crisis Green Lantern Corps volumes prior to setting up shop. We have already seen DC put out the first indicator that they are willing to go with the post-crisis route, and also pre-Kyle Rayner material for Green Lantern. An issue from the years 1979 to 1986. This is something that you should look out for if you are interested in reading more Steve Englehart material. This is the volume that you're going to be looking into. That's all I have to say for this slide.
Okay. We are moving on to Green Lantern. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, we got post-crisis Green Lantern Corps. Again, if you are more interested in reading post-crisis Green Lantern, these will be the volumes after setting up shop, and this will include New Guardians, which I put on the cover. So if that is a series that you're interested in, that will be as we've talked and consulted with DC in this particular set era, and also with Action Comics Weekly Stories. We've seen some of those Action Comics Weekly Stories also collected in the there was an annual collected in the Green Arrow DC Finest as well. So again, if that's something that you're looking into, this is the volume to vote for. Emerald Dawn to Zero Hour. This was a very, very long conversation with DC and consulting them on how they're going to collect this era if they were ever to get to that point. This is going to include all titles for the Lanterns in this period, like Stewart and Mosaic. This is also where, if you are a fan of big, raging red monster Guy Gardner that you saw at the start of Green Lantern Rebirth before he got reverted back into a Green Lantern. If you are a fan of that era of Guy Gardner, that is the particular era that you're going to be voting for this particular DC Finest volume line. Somebody also mentioned Kyle Rayner earlier. We promise we did not leave him out. Every single Ron Mars, Daryl Banks, and much later, of course, Judd Winnick's story is going to be an option for you to vote for on this poll. We treated his time as the Green Lantern from 1994 to 2004 as an option, and we wanted to make that painstakingly clear, just as much as the Jeff Johns reintroducing us back to Hal Jordan when he becomes a Green Lantern, or the main protagonist Green Lantern in the years from 2004 to 2011. This will have line-wide collections similar to Compendium Mapping, perhaps with some differences that might include Hal Jordan showing up in other stories like Mark Waid's Brave and the Bold that were not collected in those compendiums. Again, the main point being all-inclusive for this particular set and line. And that is all I have to say for Green Lantern.
Okay, we're done with Green Lantern.
I will just make a couple quick comments that I've seen in the chat here. I know we said pre-crisis and post-crisis, and people are like, but technically the story. Think about when Crisis came out. Think about how it says volumes prior to setting up shop and volumes after setting up shop. I think you have the information you need to know what we're talking about. We're not trying to make fine line continuity demarcations here. The Green Lantern stuff prior to setting up shop was released in full before Crisis ended. That's all that means. And also, clearly, if we're talking about every possible Lantern and the fact that this could be an all-inclusive Lantern line, if you go to the next slide, Omar, the Kyle Rayner era does have some stuff with other Lanterns in it. John Stewart has like some original graphic novels and things in that era. There's still some Guy Gardner stuff, but it's primarily the Kyle Rayner era, and so that's why we headlined it that way. But yes, the current thinking, we will see how it works in execution, is that if it's a Lantern title, and if that Lantern is green, that it would be part of this line.
Okay, somebody was asking about Dexstar. Where would you put Dexstar, Dom, in all these slides? Where would that fit in?
Dexstar is going to be in that Jeff Johns era right after his first, the Red Lantern's first appearance in Final Crisis Rage of the Red Lanterns, when Atrocitus introduces us to how nasty their core is with all the vomiting. That is where you would get your Dexstar material right before Flashpoint.
Like a proud papa, I am nodding my head.
Everybody loves all the characters that have vomit as their superpower, just like everybody loves Beak from X-Men.
Exactly.
Or is it Angel? Which one of them vomits?
Angel's the one that vomits. Beak is just
those
are all gross. All right.
Are you ready for this really intensely confusing Harley? I mean, it's a lot to take in. So buckle up, get ready, get the notepads out, because
I got my notepad.
Oh God. Who cursed us with Harley Quinn earlier?
Just
because there is one volume, literally one volume of Harley Quinn that you can vote for.
I can't even write that down.
No, because there's already 2 that are out. This would collect the remainder of her series that was started in that previous volume, The Ballad of Harley Quinn, and after that, she's in Gotham City Sirens. So this would complete the Harley Quinn line.
I thought this was Chubby Ray for a second. I already have 3 notepads.
Does she really have no solo series after that?
No, she's in Sirens.
Or she never had a solo series up until the
after Flashpoint.
Yeah. She was just.
I see. Right. Gotcha.
Supporting cast. That's it. We're going to move on to Hawkman. Here's a character. Speaking of confusing and convoluted stories after Crisis. I'll take this one. Golden Age. This is volumes prior to Wings Across Time, 1940 to 1960. The Silver Age and Bronze Age. Volumes after Wings Across Time continues through Isabella material from 66 to 87. Then we have the post-crisis material, including things like Hawk World, Ostrander, and Messner Loebs. Then the mid-aughts, the relaunch to Flashpoint. This is when the series eventually changes to Hawk Girl, but it would include the Jeff Johns era, the Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray era, and Walter Simonson with Howard Chaykin, 2004 to 2011. And that's really it for the Hawk people. A lot of this stuff, again, has not been collected in the Golden and Silver Age. Hawk World did have a trade paperback, but that's about it. Everything after that has not been properly collected. And then, of course, the mid-aughts with the relaunch. I think that era actually has been collected fully, if I'm not mistaken, there was an omnibus, of course, but before that, there were a series of 3 trade paperbacks, and then all of the Palmia. Actually, no, maybe no, yeah, it has because
you're right.
it ended with the Walter Simonson and Howard Chaykin run, yeah. But I mean, those books are so out of print. They need to remap them, redo them. It would be great.
Yep. And that line should definitely also include Jeff Johns and Steven Sadowski's reintroduction of the origin of Hawkman in the issues of JSA 2. So I think that would definitely be the advantage of getting this over, say, the Hawkman by Jeff Johns and Rags Morales Omni that just got reprinted about a year ago. I want to say a year ago. If I could also get to this chat, if my years are correct, you would probably be voting for the Emerald Dawn to Zero Hour on Dark Stars. I believe Dark Stars was 93. That was when they popped
That was
up.
the 90s.
Yeah, I think part of that question is rooted in the fact that the early part of Dark Stars is not quite as explicitly a Green Lantern's title because it takes a while for John Stewart to join, but it's kind of in an awkward spot where it's in that space universe along with kind of Legion and Rebels, I guess, but it becomes a Green Lantern title. So for those first, I think like 17 or 18 issues, kind of murky, but the assumption is right now probably Green Lantern, and that's not DC talking, that's Crisis talking.
Yeah, those were some early. That was, I think, some of the early Travis Charest covers I remember seeing.
Yeah, major fave.
He had that Jim Lee style. Really quick, I see some griping going on in the chat right now. Note how Omar Barnes.
Yeah, I was like,
current obsession. I can't keep up with what your current obsession is. I'm sorry. What did you want to add?
I don't know. Maybe you could just give Curtis like a Wildstorm slide to talk about. That would be great.
Oh, wow. I'm never going to be forgiven for that. What is your obsession with Hawkman?
No, I just love Hawkman. And I'm so, as a character who doesn't typically get a lot of collected editions, I was starting to despair that I just had to wait for the issues to show up on DC Infinite. And when that first Hawkman Silver showed up, I'm so excited. I want more. I want Silver Age, Bronze Age, Post-Grad. This might be my straight ballot, right? On the slide right here. I want some Hawkman.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Okay. I should have let you cook. I had no idea.
No, that's fine. You described it incredibly well. I learned things.
Yeah. Crisis is in the camp of the anti TVtropes.com article on Hawkman is confusing.
I'm in the camp of camp. If you've got giant wings and a beak mask, I'm into it. If your head is on fire and you have wizard sleeves, I'm into it. That's the DC characters that I like.
For sure.
Apparently, so are a lot of people are in the Firestorm too, which I don't know.
I'm in the Firestorm community. Confirmed member of the Firestorm community. All right, talk about horror.
Oh, yes. Curtis, I know you love the DC Finest Horror trade paperback when we talked about it. Please tell us about what options are available to pollers here.
Well, I mean, we only have one real option here, or two real options. It's the before and after. We do have 2 volumes, so one of those titles should be different, right?
Ooh, good point.
There should be volumes before Devil's Doorway and volumes after whatever that second volume is called. And so, but yeah, we're talking about Silver Age stuff versus Bronze Age stuff. And the volumes that we got already they feel very Bronze Agey, and they're full of Bronze Age collectors. So you're going to spin off of that, or you're going to go for the stuff that's before that. I will say that the Silver Age stuff, the horror is probably one of the best Silver Age anthologies, in my opinion, because I think that just the type of people that were working on them had a really big interest in that kind of drawing that kind of material. And that's when the EC horror titles all started and that kind of thing as well. So it all falls in that same category. And that horror volume is one of my favorite DC Finest, period, just hands down. It's fantastic.
Ooh, I haven't read it
so
yet.
I want more.
Jump on it. By the way, that is correct on the poll. It does have the correct volume on the actual voting.
I love the way those books are mapped. When you get into the Bronze Age, it is really freaking cool. If you were following like the horror lines that started with the EC, and then a lot of those people shifted over to the Warren, and that's when we started getting like Archie Goodwin coming in, and he brought his own people in. So you got like all these new people starting at DC that were coming over from Warren. It's so cool what they're doing, putting both of these, not just both series, but other series too, into one line.
Real quick, the next round of solicitations comes out the third Friday of the month, so I am thinking, well, not thinking, 19th at 9 a.m. is when we're going to be
9
back.
a.m. That's not normal people time. That's 12 p.m. Eastern time.
Excuse me?
Normal people time.
We're not having this conversation, Omar. Let's go ahead and move on to Joker.
This channel has existed on Eastern Standard Time since the beginning.
I'm not asking anybody to know what time it is in New Zealand, am I?
Nobody cares about that
Exactly.
except for you and Samantha. Okay, maybe a couple of other people.
Yeah, see, so exactly. So that's two people right there that care more about it than zero.
All right, we're gonna move on to the Joker.
Your favorite character, Omar. Please tell us
I'll take
about
this one
go.
since it came up a little bit earlier. We have one Joker volume, and the reason that volume exists is because of Joker's issue 1 to 9, and of course the previously unreleased 10, which is in that volume as well, that I was just admiring the other day. So that I asked DC, like, do we even need to mention any other Joker? Like, was that a one and done? And the question was, well, if you compare that Joker DC Finest to the Joker Omnibus, the Joker Omnibus actually goes a little bit further. So there's a little bit more Joker material. It's not exclusively post-crisis because it actually, some of it is from 1984 and 1985, but there would be an assumption that there's at least one more volume of Joker material to follow with the last haha. Then I also asked them, okay, well, should I list something prior to that? And they said, even though it would double dip a lot of Batman because it's Joker and because whenever Joker shows up, it's kind of a significant story, there certainly could be the possibility of having a Golden Age and Silver Age Joker book if you were to vote on it. So that is the status of that one. It's not, neither of these is a sure thing. The post-crisis one, there is specific material that could go into it. The Golden Age and Silver Age would be depending on how much you demand it. But yeah, just to point out, because I wasn't 100% certain of this myself, I opened up my copy of The Last Haha last night, and it does have that issue number 10 that was originally not printed and was first printed, I think, Omar, for the first time in the Joker Omnibus, right?
I believe it also says on the back of the DC Finest as well.
It does. The previously unpublished issue number 10.
Woo! Are people experiencing a lag? Sorry, I just noticed a couple of comments about that. Let us know if you're seeing a lag.
Yeah. I also like to point out for post-crisis, because if they were to actually include all those years up to 2011, we'd see stories like The Man Who Laughs by Ed Brubaker and Doug Mankey. And this will also probably double dip the Batman The Killing Joke by Alan Moore and Brian Bollins. So just a heads up on anyone on that front. If we're looking just past 1984, those are probably stories that would be collected in this Finest line if you ever were to vote for it.
Okay, thank you all for that. Ooh, the Netherlands. No lag, no lag. It's weird. Yeah, I was seeing this on Saturday too. Some people were seeing lag, others weren't. I paid my electric and my internet bill, so everything should be fine.
Internet electric.
Justice League. Who's the biggest fan of the Justice League between the four of us? Okay, I'll take it.
Oh, okay.
Justice League, Silver Age Volume 2. This is the volume that fits between Starro the Conqueror and the bridge between Earths. And if you're wondering why Justice League Golden Age is not included in here, why is that, Dom?
Because they didn't exist in the Golden Age. The Justice League, of course, made their first appearances in The Brave and the Bold, issue number 28. Gardner Fox decided, you know what? Why don't we team up all of these different superhero characters on this one existing planet, place them all together, and have a story about the stupid starfish?
Who needs ChatGPT, people? Not Dom.
Not me.
Firing on all cylinders, baby. All right. Then we got Silver Age Volume 4. This is one of those cases where you can vote for the book before or after Volume 3. This is the bridge between Earths and Crisis on Earth X. Bronze Age and Pre-Crisis. These are volumes between Crisis on Earth X and The Return. Continues all the way through the Detroit era, post-Crisis, Justice League International. This is volumes after The Return. Could be similar contents to the Justice League International Omnibus line. We will see.
Or more.
And then we have the 1990s. This is the Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Justice League era after International was said and done. And then JLA, which is the coming of Grant Morrison's era. But it's not just Grant Morrison. It's also Mark Waid and Joe Kelly.
And
Chris
John
Claremont,
Byrne and Chris Claremont.
Jeff Johns.
Chuck
Oh
Dixon.
my gosh, even Bob Harris. Bob Harris, editor-in-chief, best and worst of times at Marvel Comics, comes in and writes a story. And then we have the From Infinite Crisis to Flashpoints era. This would include the Brad Meltzer run, James Robinson, and of course,
Dwayne
one of my
McDuffie.
all-time favorites, Dwayne McDuffie. Yep. So those are the different eras, and most of the material has been collected before. I want to say for the Silver Age, correct, but not in the Bronze. Or no, we're getting a volume 4, but we still have to need one more volume between that and the Detroit era, don't we?
Correct.
Yeah. But it would be really cool to see that collected. So I hope if people vote for the Bronze Age and pre-Crisis, it would be something that comes after volume 4, but before the Detroit era.
I will point out, of course, we're seeing questions in the chat about what we all knew you would ask, which is about what about all of the intersection of Justice League titles after the international period? Of course, when during the period of Justice League International that's covered by the omnibuses, which sometimes I think people call the Justice League haha period because it's got the very kind of amusing Giffen and DeMatteis material. We don't know how DC is going to treat that yet. And we did not go totally down to asking DC about every single Justice League spinoff. Like, will they still have Europe and America in the same book? Will it have Justice League Task Force? Will it have there's a lot of questions. But would it have Extreme Justice? So right now we just have a broad 90s category, and it's one of those ones where I think we need to find out what DC is going to do once a book comes out from that.
Man muted himself because he knew that he wouldn't be able to rebuttal that completely.
I swear to God, this has to be Scott Lovedale's burner account.
That's what Scott Lobdell said.
All right. Any other thoughts, opinions on the Justice League before we move on? Got a few more slides to go through. All right. Now we're moving on to the Justice Society of America. For people that were wondering about All-Star Squadron, who wants to take us through this? Okay, I'll do it again. All right, we got the Golden Age going on. These are volumes after the Plunder of the Psycho Pirate, 1945 to 1956. This is Justice Society, who again didn't really have an ongoing series. Then we have the Silver Age and Bronze Age. This is Crisis on Multiple Earths, present day, Earth 2 stories through the last days. Moving on to the post-crisis era, 1991 and 1993 series. 0 Hour material, where they age up a lot of these characters because that was DC's way of fixing people. Let's make them old and get rid of these old characters. Nobody wants them. And then Jeff Johns comes in with an old heart going, let's bring some back with James Robinson and David Goyer. And then there was a relaunch in 1999, taking us all the way to Flashpoint. And, of course, the formation of JSA All-Stars, all of it included in there.
1999 relaunch would also surmisingly have the 2007 line as well, obviously with the relaunch after Infinite Crisis. Alex Ross coming onto the book to co-write the title along with Johns up until the last days, where James Robinson was writing both JLA and JSA before Flashpoint hit.
Oh man, and that Starman stuff. And did we decide if we were going to add Stargirl to that 99 lineup?
I think that would be in looking chronologically. Wait, no. Wouldn't that count in the Starman line if that were to ever exist, Omar? Or would you double dip? That's actually a good question. I think it works for both, quite honestly.
That would be fun to map, but also if you weren't reading Starman, if you weren't reading Stargirl, there is a little bit of a spoiler when Stargirl shows up in the JSA.
I would put it both in the Starman line, if that were to ever exist, and the post-crisis, whatever this era is. Post-crisis, that's where I would place it.
People are excited about Legion.
We're almost there.
Yeah,
we might be there. Who knows?
Any other thoughts about this? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is the Legion.
There we go. Dang it. No! I love the Legion, guys, by the way.
All right, we're gonna move on to the okay. Dom, I assume you want to take this, unless I think
Crisis is ready to chomp at the bit.
I think we're gonna distinctly talk about the history of the Legion of Superheroes here to avoid a situation like we had on the stream last week. So there are some Silver Age materials that we can get and collected prior to Zapco's The Legion. That is the first category you can vote for. It's the origins of the Legion. Then we have the Bronze Age, which would be volumes after Zap goes the Legion. And for the purpose of just finding a demarcation here, we chose the relaunch of the book in 1984 as the demarcation. Obviously, there's a lot of things that happen in this period. The book changes hands to Jerry Conway and then again to Paul Levitz. We're not breaking them up into multiple eras. There's a lot of Legion to cover, and so that's a whole decade. Then we've delineated that 1984 relaunch up until 1989. Why? Because at 1989, 5 years later starts. And of course, we have seen that in Omnibus, but we've not seen that pre-1989 stuff in Omnibus. So for the first chunk of Legion, these are the 4 eras we've broken into. We appreciate that Legion superfans would break it up further, but there's this is generally just a stream of 1, sometimes 2 books. There are some side books that could get collected in here, like Karate Kid, like even maybe Valor, who was not included in the Omnibus line, but it's not as deep or as long as some of the options to combine things that we've seen in Batman and JL that made us explode the options a little bit more. Now let's look at what would happen after 5 years later on the next slide. We'd have the 0 Hour reboot that would start from 1994 to 1999. Then you could also separately vote on the Abnett and Lanning period. Of course, that includes Legion Lost and Legion Worlds. That's 1999 to 2004. Then we have 3 Root and Retro Boot. And if you aren't up in all of your Legion fandom lingo, that includes Wade, Johns, Robinson, and Levitz's return, taking us through Flashpoint. Again, 2 very different eras from each other, but in terms of indicating your demand for the purpose of communicating to DC, we put them together. That gives you 7 whole regions of Legion that you can vote for, and you'll have more than 7 votes on this part of the poll. So if you want to vote a straight ticket, that is up to you.
And if Lars also wants to vote for those 7 books, he is also happy and willing to do so, as he is not here to represent himself.
Nobody tell Lars about this poll. All right. Yeah, this is, man, there's so much Legion. How many Legion DC finalists do we have so far, Dom?
1.
Okay.
We have Zap Goes
Which
the
is-
Legion, which collects up to the... Go ahead, Crisis.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just reaching for my shelf because they're all.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Zap goes the Legion.
Yes, this takes us through 8 years. My memory resolves correctly up through the Bronze Age transition with Dave Cockrum on art. We have a lot of Jim Shooter in that particular volume as well. And I am very surprised because this was a line that I told myself, this is exactly the type of franchise that this line of DC collected editions is perfect for. And since inception, we've only had that one line, and I would like to see that expanded, please.
So one more thing I want to add about this. This is one of my favorite era of Legion of Superheroes. Not only is it Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning before the Marvel Cosmic era, it's Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning, and Olivier Coipel. Olivier Coipel.
That's a
Like,
Olivier
his
Coipel
art
cover that you're looking
It's
at too.
so good during this era. Oh my god. Yeah. So a lot of stuff needs to be collected for Legion. Is Lars here? Lars Pearson here? Somebody told Lars. I am here.
Oh, whoa, he's actually here. Oh my gosh.
Lars, are you serious? See,
The
everything
Norwegian
is
assassin
going.
strikes again.
Did we do it justice?
Did we do it
Probably
justice?
not.
This is everybody doing it, because DC again helped us consult with this particular poll, and I think having these lines of demarcation will help in communicating to them, at least even if only broadly, what people are interested in if it makes the top results. So I'm very excited to see where any of these, if at all, land on the top marks of this poll, considering that we had a couple of Legion of Superheroes omnibuses by Paul Levitz make it into the top 60 last week.
And if you want to hear hours of us discussing the finer points of how Legion should be mapped, tune into those results from the Tiger Eyes DC Omnibus Most Wanted poll that we had last week. Let's continue, Omar.
Oh yeah. Metamorpho and Plastic Man.
Yeah, this is one where I decided to place it into what, even though, yes, they're not at all, well, actually, one changes elements or adheres to the periodic table of elements and decides to transform his body by any of those specific elements. And then, of course, one manipulates his body so that he can stretch in time. But I decided to place them all into one because I don't know. I guess I just decided to. For Metamorpho, you are going to be looking at volumes after the Element Man. The Element Man is the only Metamorpho DC Finest that we've had so far of the line, but it was also a particular volume that I was very impressed by. I actually didn't anticipate to have such a fun time with the book, but I did. And this will cover the years from 1972 to 2011. And again, we only have the one, so that is the only era that we're looking for. On top of that, a lot of miniseries post-Crisis, including Year One, a real brief short stint with Mark Waid on the character, not too particularly deep with some of these. So we thought, let's have this broad 50-ish year to 49 year term for this one particular character. For Plastic Man, we've also only had one, The Origin of Plastic Man, which takes us to the original quality comics that came out in the 1940s. So we're going to be kicking it off with the Golden Age, which again takes us the volumes after the origin of Plastic Man from 44 to 56. If you are a big fan of Weird Wackadaisical and you want to get further into that particular line, you are going to be looking at the Silver and Bronze Age version of the character from 66 to 86. And if you're a big Kyle Baker fan and you really, really missed your shot on that really, really cool deluxe hardcover that came out a couple of years ago, obviously, DC Finest won't have that material on the cover at all. But if you want that era collected, that is your choice. Kyle Baker runs from 87 to 2011.
Oh, we
Omar
stopped.
is-
What's going on? Let's keep it moving, y'all. Keep it
All
pumping.
right, I'm gonna keep it moving then. No more thoughts. Robin. So Tim Drake is, of course, the greatest Robin of all time, but we still have Dick Grayson, Golden Age, volume prior to Origin of Robin, solo material from Star Spangled Comics. And then we have the Dick Grayson Bronze Age. This is the volume after the Origin of Robin and would include the contents of the Bronze Age Omnibus, which has already been mapped. Then we get to the greatest Robin. If you're thinking, wait a second, why is Jason Todd not included in here? Dom, why not?
Because you can already get Jason Todd's stories in Batman Year One and Year Two, The Killing Joke and Other Stories, and Death in the Family for his post-crisis material, and his pre-crisis material will have Red Skies and all the volumes before that, as far as that version of the character.
All right, so we get to the Tim Drake era, which would include Red Robin. And if you're thinking, what about the other Robins? Not enough material. Not enough material. That's why
You would, and if you wanted Damian Wayne, well, guess what? If you want Damian Wayne, go to the Batman portion of the poll and vote for that so sweet 2006 to 2011 years. You really want to see him team up with Dick Grayson and Batman and Robin, or even threaten the guy that we just talked about, Tim Drake, to the point where he ends up with his head smashed on a particular part of cement in the Batcave. That is the one that you want to vote for if you're a big Damian Wayne fan.
Yeah, so the short version of that story is that Damian Wayne doesn't have any solo material prior to Flashpoint. He does occasionally kind of poke his neck out and have an issue mostly to himself, but it's all within the scope of the Batman line. Even obviously Batman and Robin would be in the Batman line, the Grant Morrison series. I forget, I just had a brief headache as if somebody just like took a crowbar to my head, so I missed if anybody mentioned Jason Todd. But when I questioned DC about that, the answer was Jason Todd really has like 2 solo stories ever in the scope of him being Robin in publishing at that time, and they will just be in the Batman line, and there's no such thing as a Jason Todd DC Finest.
Right.
All right, let's see if Curtis has been paying attention. Curtis, you're saying Duke Thomas and We Are Robin are not enough material to put into a DC Finest. Curtis, why can that not be in DC Finest?
Probably because they are not very good books. I don't know. I haven't read them, so I can't say.
Eisner nominee Curtis Finlay, everyone. Okay.
To correct Curtis on that note, Duke Thomas appeared after Flashpoint, so his stories in We Are Robin, Batman and Robin Eternal, and also Batman and the Signal by Scott Snyder in 2018 would not qualify for a DC Finest line.
Okay, we're going to move away from Robin for right now and go into the science fiction, which is one of my favorites.
Curtis.
Anyone can talk about this. Curtis, what about you, buddy? You want to talk about this?
Sure. Well, the Golden Age, the thing about these anthologies is that they did go way, way back, because most comics at the beginning of, when comics were a thing, they were all anthology titles, and Superman was just one story in an anthology title. And so there are so many stories here that they could collect, starting in the Golden Age, which was big for space because of comic strips like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. They were so popular and influencing so much at the time that they permeated through the comic books when they actually became comic books. So the Golden Age has a lot of science fiction material that you could draw from, including Tommy Tomorrow, Mystery in Space, and Strange Adventures. So that's all the stuff that would happen before the volume that's already been released called The Guerrilla World. Then after that, in the Silver Age, also heavily influenced by sci-fi, because that's just the atomic age, that's the space race it was on. And so we have more titles, not as much as the Golden Age, I believe, but still quite a big deal, from like Action Comics and Strange Adventures and Mystery in Space. And then of course Bronze Age has their stories as well in various different comics that kind of just popped up here and there, like Strange Sports Stories, if you can believe that. That's the title there. Then you can see the picture that Don chose from Strange Sports Stories.
Yeah, it was really important to me because as a neophyte who, like, when the science fiction book came out, I was like, what does that even mean? That since I had DC on the line a few times, I'm like, can you just like tell us, like, what would this include? What is the scope? Because each of these different eras, as Curtis just pointed out, like, would have stories from very different titles, because science fiction was a very different thing in each of these three different eras. And so hopefully this kind of wayfinding information, clearly just like throwing a dart and voting, I don't know, science fiction, it's hard to know what they would include. So hopefully this wayfinding information kind of lets you know what you might be the most interested in.
Okay, I'm going to move on, gentlemen, to Sergeant Rock. One book. This will be volumes after the Rock of Easy Company that Joe Kubert on art. And his stuff is also collected in the War DC Finest, right?
No,
Dom?
no,
No Sergeant Rock. But
no,
Haunted
no
Tank.
Sergeant Rock. I think that it's going to be very imperative to have just a line of, if you want to see how this guy handles war, I think better than most people do. This is going to be in its own separate Finest line.
Awesome. Okay.
I also, real quick, people made this phonetic correction. I'm really grateful that they did that. I kept calling this book, the book that exists, The Rock of Easy Co., because that's how my mind reads it. I never look at things as like, oh, like that means company, or if you spell that out. I mean, I'm the idiot who calls Mark Bagley Mark Bagley because I keep thinking of his last name like the food bagel, but it's not. So I want to think.
Don't call yourself an idiot, dude. Look. I remember when I was a kid, I would call things like Mario Bros. And
Yeah, same here.
I say co. People say that all the time. That's a thing.
Yeah,
that's a thing. Don't listen to this is coming from the mispronouncer in chief. I say things wrong all the time, but that's
and I'm not one to correct people, because if I was, I would have been correcting Crisis on that Liefeld slander earlier. I think Leafield is
no. You know what? They're right on that one. They got it. Yeah,
you got that right. Okay. Wow.
I always say Monsters Incorporated in full.
Okay, well, you got.
And that's why you're nominated for an.
Yeah, that's why you're getting an Eisner. All right, we're gonna move on.
We're gonna move on
to the Spectre. Take us through these Crisis, or
sure. So I would love to see some Golden Age Spectre. That would be a volume, singular. I checked, prior to Wrath of the Spectre, which is the one we already have on the shelves, because there's really not a lot of him that you could collect. Then after Wrath of the Spectre, which pretty much collects all of his Silver Age possibilities, we would jump into the late Bronze Age prior to Crisis with Post-Crisis by Doug Bunch. I know it says Post-Crisis, and then below it says 1983. And I specifically asked about that. And the answer was that because the Doug Bunch run picks up some themes of what happened in 1983-84, that technically that book would probably start a little bit earlier in the year range. So that's one of those ones like the Lanterns Post-Crisis, where I understand that the title of the thing and the years of the thing seem to conflict, but I promise you it's intentional. So then there is Post-Crisis by Ostrander, which of course a lot of people would love to have, and then Spectre of the Hal Jordan years. Not to give too much of a spoiler, but if you know your DC history, for a while it is not Jim Corrigan, it is Hal Jordan who is the Spectre, and that's from 1999 to 2003.
Shout out to J.M. DeMatteis.
Isn't it? Is it DeMatteis? I thought it was DeMatteis. Is it DeMatteis?
I have no idea.
Omar
I can explain that one. I know the answer. It's actually both
Yeah,
Dematis is how he went by in the 80s,
Mhm.
and DeMatteis is what he goes by currently. He
Yeah.
made a distinct change at one point in his life.
He is a super sweet guy, and he was like, you could say it either way, but the correct way of doing it is the first one you said. But he is also the guy that says Magneto, so I don't know about that one.
But he. Go ahead.
Well, they're
Chris.
not magnetes, are they? Let's continue.
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me
They're
started
not
on
wrong.
vineyards.
They're not wrong, Omar.
Don't get me
we
started
got one
on
more.
vineyards and vineyards. Live my entire life in the United
But
States
wait,
here.
we
All right.
weren't done with him, because after Hal Jordan retakes the Green Lantern mantle starting in Rebirth by Jeff Johns in 2004. Notice how I say Jeff Johns now? That's how much I care about you all. Then in the 2000s, there's one more volume of one more Spectre, which is the Spectre Crispus Allen.
Who was created by Greg Rucka. So if you want those Greg Rucka tales and other, all slapped into one. If you want Final Crisis Revelations 2.
I always love how Gene, oh God, what is his name? The guy that played Lex Luthor, he would say Lex Luthor. And that's the way I pronounce it since the movie. Thank you guys so much for all the work you do. Is there any line options for Outsiders? Yes. Love the first bronze hardcover, but the others are very expensive. Yes, that would be the new line that
the first part of the
lines that already exist. Yeah, thank you, Gene Hackman. He would always call him Lex
Hackman.
Hackman. Gene
like
Hackman. You've seen movies with Gene Hackman.
I'm just being facetious. Okay?
Oh my gosh, let's talk about Static. So we already have Playing with Fire, which kicks off his line. Of course, Static ran pretty much throughout all of the milestone years. And so we can have further lines, multiple volumes that continue those collections.
I have never read the Dwayne McDuffie, John Paul Leon run at all, but I was blown away by how fun and touchy this book was. This is a particular line that I probably might end up voting for it in my top 8 just because of how insanely personal it felt at times too. So I know a lot of people love the character, but man, this one hits home. This one hits home hard, and I would love to see them continue on with the Static line for DC Finest.
None of this Static Shock nonsense. It's Static. That was his name. All right, moving on to the Suicide Squad, which we talked a little bit about earlier. Dom, you want to take this one since you were talking about the differences in the omnibus? Or no, it was released at the same time the omnibus was.
Yeah, so Suicide Squad omnibus by John. Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead. I was going to say that first one, the year is a mistake. It should say 59.
But that's on me.
Okay.
But anyways.
I want to make sure people don't freak out like there was Secret Golden Age Suicide Squad.
Yeah, Secret Golden Age Suicide Squad. John Ostrander had his Suicide Squad run put out in omnibus. I mean, it was one of the biggest surprises. I remember just being on that Edelweiss poll. But I mean, shortly after, we got a DC Finest edition of that as well. But anyways, these are going to be Silver Age. So these are from the years 1959 to 1964. I want to place that as an error on me that I will take blame of. This would be the volume prior to the Trial by Fire, which kicks off Suicide Squad. Of course, that particular era of DC Finest starts with Legends, as those were the technical first stories of the post-crisis Suicide Squad. But alas, if you want volumes after the Nightshade Odyssey, because DC is planning on continuing the line through the John Ostrander years, volumes after would go from 1988 to 2001. And the 2000s, if you are interested in any Suicide Squad material after John Ostrander, you're just a big fan of the franchise in general, well, these is going to be your option to vote in that era for Suicide Squad.
I will say Dom of X maybe got that line because he loves to fall on his Sword of X. Dom was one of many people who proofread this, I think upwards of 7. So it is not, if there's a missing year, that is on everybody in the panel, and we're happy to correct it for you. It was not Dom's fault.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely Curtis's fault. Strike 2, Curtis.
I did proofread and I didn't catch that.
Eisner or no Eisner? Okay, we're gonna move on to the Super Friends.
Oh yeah, Curtis, get us through this.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we already have the first book in the series, which collected the very beginning of the Super Friends series, which was a tie-in to the TV show that was produced by Hanna-Barbera. So it's not going to fall under the animated adventures line that we talked about in the first half of this live stream. So there's apparently just one more book that wraps up all of the content that's labeled Super Friends. And so that's going to be one more volume. And then we also already mentioned that the Superpowers series that comes after Super Friends, which is based on another Hanna-Barbera cartoon of the same name, they just kind of rebranded, is going to be considered its own line. So it's not going to be contained here. So if you just want the rest of the, the Wonder Twins era Super Friends, then vote for this volume to complete your 2-volume set.
Okay. And that takes us to Superboy. Which
Take it away,
had
Omar.
a golden age. These would be the volumes prior to the Superdog from Krypton, the Silver Age and Bronze Age, volumes after the Superdog from Krypton, the New Adventures of Superboy. This is the 1983 to 1985 era, so the pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then, of course, the Connor Kent era. This would include the Superboy and the Ravers Adventure Comics and Superboy, 94 to 2011. And these are the different eras that you can vote for Superboy. All of them a little bit different than the other, especially the post-Crisis Superboy.
I will point out that even though Silver Age and Bronze Age says 1955 to 1982, that isn't continuous, because at some point in the 1970s, his title turns into a Legion of Superboy or Legion of Superheroes title. So it wouldn't double dip everything from that. At the point that it becomes a full-on Legion title, that would switch over to Legion line. But he does have other stories in the 70s.
I don't know, man. I get it.
No, the Superboy TV series, which had a long-running comic book of its own, is not continuity. So, and it's a media property, so it's not part of the Superboy line.
Thank you.
Okay, that is Superboy. Now we have Supergirl, which has the Silver and Bronze Age. This is the volumes after the Girl of Steel, the Matrix Supergirl, which we talked about in the Omnibus show, talking about how it's a different character. This was volume prior to Body and Soul, a single book, so just that first volume. And then the Peter David, the volumes after Die and Let Live. And then the 2000s, this would include the Jeff Loebs and Sterling Gates and Kelly Sue DeConnick era, 2003 to 2011. It's the character created by Jeff Loebs and Michael Turner.
Michael S. Turner.
So those are your 4 different eras you can vote for. Which takes us to the Man of Steel. Golden Age, the 1940s. This is the volumes after the Invisible Luthor, or Luthor if you're Gene Hackman. Golden Age, the 1950s. Then we have Silver Age, volumes prior to the Kryptonite Nevermore. Bronze Age, the 1970s, volumes after the Kryptonite Nevermore. Those are the first 4. Then we have Bronze Age, pre-Crisis 1980s, volumes prior to the Man of Steel. Post-Crisis, pre-Triangle era, volumes between Man of Steel and Time Again, including Burn and Exile. Then we get into the Triangle era. These are the volumes that would follow up the Time Again. Early 2000s, post-Triangle era through Infinite Crisis, so going through this City of Tomorrow. And then the late 2000s, post-Infinite Crisis to Flashpoint, which is just crazy to think about. Taking us from Jeff Johns, Amphibian Ciesa, and Kurt Busiek. And all the way through the World of Krypton, and I guess actually JMS, right? The JMS era.
Yes, technically at the end
wrapping it up,
12 issues.
And that is all of Superman. So all these slides right here, a lot of Superman.
Just like Batman, maybe not as intimately connected because, of course, Batman has that Shadow the Bat inclusion and obviously all of those titles that spin out after 2000, especially after 2006. But for Superman, I mean, you're looking at a whole barrage of eras that have not been explored yet. It would be fascinating to get Johns and Busiek in one. Maybe if, DC is going, we've already seen them do the absolute route for Johns and also the standard size hardcover route for Busiek. how about we just get it all in one all-encompassing action and Superman back and forth line between that. Also be really cool to see Greg Rucka's time on Action Comics all mapped out well in this against the Superman titles. I just think that for as much love as Batman should be getting, I think it's also important to emphasize that Superman is going to be treated nearly just as well from what we've seen in the time and time again DC Finest that came out a couple of months ago, and also with the Man of Steel DC Finest that's coming up in the next couple of months too.
Really quick, I can't remember if DC
got canceled,
and we
it got canceled. You shared it,
but I can't say why it got canceled, right?
Correct. You're correct.
Okay,
you're correct.
What happened to the last? It got canceled. That's all we're allowed to share right now. And Ed Bennis can draw a lovely fill in the blank.
That's right. And
Everybody
if you're interested in that DC Finest of Ed Bennis, and I can't pronounce that last name of the guy who was writing Action Comics, you would want to vote for the early 2000s post-Triangle era of Superman.
Okay. So is that it for Superman? Any other thoughts before we move on?
No, but I will absolutely talk about this next one, Superman Family. This is another one like science fiction where I didn't just play dumb. I actually was dumb, and I was like, you got to explain to me how this line works, DC. What is the story? So when we start out in the late Golden Age and the early Silver Age, we're pretty much talking about two titles: Superman's friend Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal, and Lois Lane, Superman's girlfriend. We got a pretty early edition of this with the giant turtle man, but that's not until 1960, which means there are things that happened before that. Both of those titles actually started in the late Golden Age. And I'll just grab that book off my shelf to hold in my hand while we talk about this. So that is in 1960 and 1961, this book right here. And so that would be the markation of the end of the Golden Age and the early Silver Age. We go back to everybody view so we can keep talking about the slide anytime now. Okay, so then in the Silver Age, there will be volumes after this, the Giant Turtle Man, then the Bronze Age, all pretty clear. And both of those titles continued running through that. Now, the thing to note in the Bronze Age is, of course, the Jimmy Olsen title does become a part of Jack Kirby's Fourth World. To the extent it can exist on its own, it would continue to be collected here. Now, the real confusion for me is what would post-crisis Superman Family look like? Because there is no Superman Family title, but there's a number of kind of Superman supporting titles that may or may not wind up in the main Superman line, depending on how adjacent to the triangles they are. So some examples of that are like there's a Lois Lane series by Mindy Newell that's 2 issues. There's the trio of World of series, World of Metropolis, World of Krypton, and World of, I want to say Smallville is the 3rd one. Jimmy Olsen has a number of his own series over the years through Flashpoint. So this wouldn't necessarily be a lengthy continuation of the line, but I specifically asked, like, what would even go in this? And that was the answer that I received.
Thank you for that breakdown.
Might have an Elseworlds or 2 in there too.
Let's move on to Swamp Thing, a character again that you're probably wondering why, if it's Vertigo, but we already know why. And why is that, Dom?
Because it appeared in universe. The answer that we got specifically from DC was if those characters either were in main Earth continuity prior to Crisis on Infinite Earths, or even after Crisis on Infinite Earths, or if they interacted with other DC characters at any point from 1935 to 2011, they are definitely going to be included in a DC Finest line.
Okay, so what are we looking at here?
We're going to be looking at 4 particular different eras for Swamp Thing. Of course, we have The Man Who Would Not Die, which was definitely a surprise to me. And another book that is also coming out relatively at the same time of an omnibus. This almost lines up perfectly with the release of the double hardcover in 1 slipcase Dark Genesis Swamp Thing omnibus that is coming out later this year. Of course, this would be the volume after that and prior to the book I'm just about to talk about, the Alan Moore run, the run that everybody keeps on talking about as one of their staples of, oh wow, this might be the greatest thing ever. This is an option as arguably the most important comic book of the entire line, maybe not even just this, but also all DC Finest, 1984 to 1987. Post Alan Moore from the 80s to the 90s, which will include Rick Veitch, Wheeler, Nancy A. Collins, and Mark Millar and Grant Morrison as well from 87 to 99. This was also one where we talked about this with DC. Yes, this would all include all the Vertigo series. And then the 2000s, where Brian K. Vaughan got on the title from 2000 2011.
Okay, so that's the eras you can vote for. Then we have the team ups. Again, these are pre-existing books. This is the Silver Age and early Bronze Age, so volumes prior to the Impossible Escape. Then we have the Bronze Age Gap volume. This is the volume between Impossible Escape and the Chase to the End of Time. Late Bronze Age to Crisis. These are volumes after the Chase to the End of Time, taking us to Crisis, and then post-Crisis, including Brave and the Bold, 1991 and 2007. This is where people will find that beautiful George Perez with
Mark Waid
working on those particular titles.
By the way, ball knowers, you know what cover I chose if you're looking at that post-crisis cover right there. That's all I'm going to say.
And I'll also point out that as exclusively revealed on the stream, if you want the DC early 80s event DC challenge, that would be in that late Bronze Age to Crisis set of volumes.
Thank you. Yeah. And 4 different eras to vote for. Let's see here. DC Swamp Thing is DC all along. It was under Vertigo, Alan Moore, and Brightest Day Swamp Thing returns to Actually, it didn't go Vertigo until Nancy Collins' run. Run. It was just DC when Alan Moore was writing the book.
You're correct.
All right. We got one ball lower.
Oh man, Teen Titans, my favorite franchise, a franchise that I grew up with. We only have one printed DC Finest. There is another one on the way that is going to collect all of the Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan drug and war specials that are not collected in those omnis. Can't wait for that. But aside from that Terror in the Night volume that I just talked about, there are 5 distinct Teen Titans eras that I also I figured, you know what, I have a hand in saying some things about these. We do not have a Silver Age and Bronze Age line yet for DC Finest. We saw one of those issues collected in the Doom Patrol DC Finest because our good friend Garfield Logan, aka Beast Boy, pops up to team out with the Doom Patrol. But if you're a fan of Bob Haney, 1966 to 1978, this is the line that you want if you want the original 5 of Donna, Garth, Roy, Dick, and Wally. When Wolfman gets on, because we do not have, just like the Cassandra Cain Volume 1, we do not have the first volume of Marv Wolfman and George Perez's time on the new Teen Titans, of course, featuring brand new characters like Starfire, Cyborg, and Raven. This is the volume prior to Terror in the Night. This is going to collect the years from 1980 to 1982, again in one singular volume right before that volume that is coming out much later this year. We have the Wolfman era. If you are just like, oh man, this is my era of Titans, or if you want to see them continue all the way up, perhaps we could even see a DC Finest mimic the way that they are doing the new Titans omnibus that is also set to come out, I believe, in mid-August. This is the era that you will want to vote for, and I'm sure that will probably end up highly as most people are looking at it. These are volumes, again, after Judas Contract through the end of Teen Titans, as wonderfully pointed out by our good friend Curtis from the years 1984 to 1994. This was one that I had a heavy hand in because I told myself this is a particularly underrated and undercollected, never even collected portion of DC Comics. When Dan Jurgens got a reboot of the team featuring characters like Argent, Jodo, and much later with Freddie Freeman, our good friend Captain Marvel Jr. on the team. Spoilers. This is the post-Wolfman Legacy era. Characters that brought on what the original new Teen Titans, as much as it feels weird to say that, this is that era of DC that I am specifically talking about, and also would include the JLA Titans Technis Imperative. That is a crossover between those teams to get us the 1999 series that kicks off with Devin Grayson on the title and a return to form with the team from the years 1996 to 2003. Again, never seen that all collected before. Would love to see it.
Yeah, the only thing collected from that era is the Technis Imperative.
You're correct. You're correct. And Jeff Johns through Flashpoint, we recently got a compendium of this, but this would go from the years 2003 to 2001, and this would include the Judd Winnick 2008 Titan series. So and more comprehensive at that, I think, even than the compendiums and the omnibus by Johns is worth out. So these are all the titans, and if you want to vote for them, just like I probably will with my top 12, this is going to be awesome. I can't wait to see this all happen.
How many Teen Titans do we have so far in
One.
DC Finest?
One printed and one on the way.
Okay. If you are looking for DC Finest Golden Age Captain Marvel, go back to the stream. We are on hour 3 right now.
The blood sugar is dropping. The attention spans are getting smaller. I'm here to very briefly talk about War and possibly some other W titles with you. So let's talk about, look, this one's real easy. We have one War book, The Big Five arrive, and it's kind of in that perfect spot of like dividing between the Golden Age and Silver Age. So you can vote for Golden Age War that would have volumes prior to The Big Five arrive, and Silver and Bronze Age War, which would be after. Clearly, there are some kind of borderline heroes that seem war adjacent in the Golden Age that we've put on their own lines. Let's just keep in mind that war books tend to be things that are not super heroic, although sometimes there's a haunted tank involved, and tend to be pretty specifically focused on actual war combat.
I want to get to a quick question from Nightwing. Also rewind to the portion that would be a new line that we'd be voting for. The only stuff that would be collected in the Jeff Johns, or if you decide to vote for that, would be the crossovers, if they ever were to collect that.
But the Winnick Titans would be in that one slide at the bottom.
Yep.
All right. War. We're done talking about war. All right. Moving on to Westerns.
I know people had questions about this earlier.
Yeah, so I have a specialty in W's today. So Westerns, one of the big questions that everybody, including us, had is Western now synonymous with Jonah Hex? Now, if you recently picked up that first Western volume, which I've seen a lot of people really loving because it's so cool to get that material, a lot of the material from Tomahawk had never been collected before, but then the Jonah Hex material had. At a point in the Bronze Age in the 70s, basically all of the other Western material eventually tails off, and Western becomes All-Star Western starring Jonah Hex, and Jonah Hex kind of becomes synonymous with Western. So as we talked about earlier, we did not put him in his own line. We asked DC, and they said, for now, the best thing to do would be to say that you can vote for Jonah Hex under Western. But part of what I started with that first to explain is there's a lot of Western at DC, and a lot of it is never collected or severely under-collected, and that would all be stuff that would be in the Silver Age. So there's tons of Western material in the Silver Age. So if you liked the non-Jonah Hex stuff in that DC Finest and you want more like that, you probably actually want to vote for Silver Age because there's so much material to explore there. There is some Western material in the Golden Age, and so that's why we have that listed first. But I think for those of you who are really loving that Western volume out right now, you got to make a decision if you are loving the non-Jonah Hex parts, in which case you probably want to vote for Silver Age, or the Jonah Hex parts, in which case you probably want to vote for the Jonah Hex option.
Thank you for clarifying all that. And this is where you're finding Jonah Hex.
There he is.
You're a big Jonah Hex fan. Somebody clip it, send it to a friend. It's under Westerns, it's not its own line. Vote for it on the thing if you want it to be printed by DC.
And I know the questions earlier would Jonah Hex, in West under the guise of Westerns, push all the way to his Hex series, all the way to his 1990 stuff? The answer from DC is, for now, if you want Jonah Hex, vote for him under Western. That is the piece of information I have to share for you. So let's see you vote for it and force them to answer that question.
Okay, we are moving on to another W that I'm pretty sure you're excited to talk about. That is
Rev it up.
It's actually our final one in the poll, Wonder Woman, and I'm trying my best to feature my Wonder Woman hair as I do every time. All right, but I will not go on too at length here. In the Golden Age, we already have the start of the Golden Age 2 volumes, actually, so we're already in 1944. We would continue to collect Golden Age volumes all the way up to the transition to her Silver Age continuity, which happens in 1958. Then we start the Silver Age of Wonder Woman. We've had it collected entirely in Omnibus, but it's our chance to have it comprehensively in DC Finest. Please note, it says through Diana Prince. For the purposes of this poll, we're treating Diana Prince as if it's part of the Silver Age. I know that a lot of you are going to say that's Bronze Age, but just because of the fact that it's part of omnibuses that are already collected and the Bronze Age period is all uncollected in omnibus, we made the decision that we're going to group Diana Prince with Silver Age to make that group not only Silver Age, but also parentheses already collected in omnibus, so that if people still want to see that in DC Finest, it's very clear. Then we have the Bronze Age starting directly after the Diana Prince material wraps up, and that would conclude with a volume that we've already had released, The Legend of Wonder Woman, that has her material from 1983 to Crisis in color for the first time. We'd still need a few books to cover the rest of the Bronze Age. Then we move to volumes after The Legend of Wonder Woman. And of course, the immediate thing after Legend of Wonder Woman, where the next volume would pick up, is Wonder Woman 1987, issue number 1 by George Perez. So that would include not only Perez's run on the first 62 issues of that, but also the William Messner Loeb's run that follows that, the John Byrne run, the Luke run. Pretty much if it happened between 1987 and 2000 Wonder Woman, that is your voting option. Which brings us to the next slide with just 2 more, I want to say, voting options.
You're correct.
So one is the early mid 2000s. So this would be volumes prior to one that you may have in your shelf already, Origins and Omens. That includes a lot of big name creators, Jimenez, Rucka, the Amazon's Attack period, all the way up to Simone, including the Jodi Picoult stuff, which happens right before Simone, that is not in that Origins and Omens volume, I am pretty sure. It's within arm's reach. So yeah, that volume picks up directly
14,
after
14.
the Amazon's Attack stuff. And then finally, here's one of those fun times that we can tell you exactly what a final volume will be. It is the final pre-Flashpoint volume by J. Michael Straczynski, the volume that is after Dawn Before Darkness. He writes from Wonder Woman 600 to 614. And actually, really interesting, if you've looked in Dawn Before Darkness, which just recently arrived, I think, so I was just looking through it this week, it actually has half of the stories from Wonder Woman 600. The other half would be in the Straczynski volume because he wrote them. And that would take us all the way to Flashpoint.
And that's it. That is all of the slides, right?
I don't know.
Yes,
That's
sir.
it. That's it, man.
Okay. Time to vote. This is it. I will be letting you know when to refresh this video. But first, I need to share my screen really quick. And let me go ahead and remove this one and add this slide right here. Okay. See if you can see. Is that big enough? Please let me know. But you go to this website that will be in the description of the video. And this is how you vote. You put in your email address. Brown Poppy Needs Food Badly is not a real email address. I'm putting a fake one in. I'm not going to submit these votes. There is an optional question here. How many DC Finest volumes do you currently own? And those are your options right there. This is just like the weighted voting that we usually have, where you have your first choice counting as the most votes, second choice, third choice. But if you see here, it's going across the line. So it's not like the Marvel books that we've done or the DC polls that we've done in the past. So you have 8 votes. And then don't forget to come down here to take us to these polls right here. So that's for the ongoing series, right? You have 8 of those. Then you have 5 for the DC Finest titles that have never existed. So you're getting more than 8 votes. I know that Crisis said 8, but that's why we were talking about these over here. So much like the previous ones, we have weighted voting. So your first choice counts as the most points. So please keep that in mind. And you go all the way down to the bottom. Make sure you scroll to the bottom. Don't just leave the website, where you can put in your favorite title or character not represented here in case we missed out on it for the new lines. In what year did you start reading comic books? Regular basis, that's optional. How many DC compendiums do you currently own? Optional. And approximately how many Omnis, Absolutes, Library Editions do you currently own? All that is optional. Hit submit. That's it. So you're getting 8 votes for the classic stuff, the stuff that's already existed. You just need future volumes of. And you're getting 5 votes for the new ones. Okay.
And I'll just briefly add to that, the demographic questions, none of them are required, but if you've seen any of our results polls, our result slides for the polls from any of the polls so far this year, we give you a lot of very interesting information with the demographic slide. So I would encourage you to opt in, especially when it comes to the year you started reading. If you don't put anything else, if you don't want to count the omnibuses in your house, that's fine. But at the very least, say the year that you started reading, because it just gives us so much fun data to present to everybody when we get to the results.
And the last thing I want to add to that is that the voting, the poll, everything ends on June 10th, 2026 at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Daylight's time, whatever we're on. All right. As of now, you should be able to highlight or refresh this video. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to quit sharing this. Everybody go and refresh the video. And you should be able to see the link now. Please let me know if you cannot. Refresh this YouTube video that you're watching right now. And you should have a link there to go and vote. And if you need the link,
James
link is right here. I'm going to pin that right to the top of the chat. We'll talk about the rest of the schedule here in a second. Let me pin this to the top. I got to go through all these comments first and get to the very bottom. And of course, I cannot find it when I need it. And I think there it is. Yeah. So there it is. Replace pin message. Okay. We are going to be going through the actual results. And please, one of you jump in and let me know if I'm wrong. Will be on Monday, June 15th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What everybody has, right? Okay, awesome. Good, you see it. Good. Awesome. So, yeah, go and vote. Have fun. Let us know what you're voting for. You don't have to, but we're going to find out anyway. And, of course, we'll be sharing this with DC. All this information that you all are providing. Good luck. I hope you all get the new lines that you wanted, and of course the future volumes of the books that you still need.
I do want to make a couple notes about DC getting the data. You do get to enter an email address as part of filling out the form. If you have a Google email address, it means the form saves as you go, so you don't like lose your work. We are not sharing email addresses with DC. Nope. They do not get to see the votes live as they come in. They will get a version of the results similar to if you've ever seen the version that Omar shares on Patreon in the past. It does not have individual voters on it, and it does not have email addresses. So just, I know, privacy is a concern. We've never talked about sharing data directly to an external source, and I want to let all of you know that I and Omar and Pollmaster Jim all take that super, super seriously. Yeah. The other thing to note is that, again, I take the demographics questions really seriously. That first one, we've never put a demographic question before the poll options before, but DC Finest, it's so new. We're like, a year and a half into the run. Mm-hmm. You probably know exactly how many you have on their shelf at the moment. So it's really helpful to say that for demographic reasons. I'm personally really curious about if people have 0 DC Finest, which is fine. You can still vote on the poll if you really would buy this. Vote on the poll if you would buy the stuff. I'm really interested to know if you have 0 DC Finest, then what are you voting for in the poll? Is it because you want stuff like Golden Age JSA All-Stars and Sugar and Spike and Funny Animals that just aren't represented in the line yet? It would be really interesting to know. Similarly, there's, I think, 62 that are currently released as of this day. I'm really curious to see what are the things that people want the most to have 62. So that's why I'm encouraging you to fill out the demographic stuff. It just allows us to do those deep dives into the data. And then the final thing is we've noted a lot of edge cases on this stream. We've tried to answer as many as we can, but I've seen even more flowing in. We got that Rip Hunter one from earlier. People mentioned Detective Chimp. People want to know about what about Kate Kane stories that are like solo stories in the Batman era from the Silver and Bronze Age. If you have things that you don't feel like are clear where they are in the poll, feel free to leave a comment here on the stream anytime the next 10 days, and I will be happy to chat with GC to see if we can answer it. But also put in that stuff on the where is it stuff and the wayfinding for the poll for next year. It could be that DC actually has a home for it somewhere already in the poll. Detective Chimps might fit into detectives. I'm not 100% sure, but knowing that you were wondering about it lets us make a better poll next year. So I just want to say, like, it's always an honor to get to do this for the community. I'm beside myself that I was corresponding with somebody with an official DC email address, and I'm just I want to make this poll great for you and great for DC and great for everybody's shelves. And to do that, I just need you to all vote super honestly about what books you would actually buy, and 1 vote per person, please.
Yeah, we always find you.
Okay.
Apparently 0 is not an option.
It will be a choice in a moment. Give me a second to work.
You do that. Well, I'll take some.
I assume none of you watching are 0 people, but I guess you could have been. But just give me a second.
Maybe. This was fun. I'm glad that I'm getting back into comics at this point in time, especially with this line making it easy to start collecting. Oh, and the fact that they are all in print as of this video, it makes it so much easier to get, except for your wallet. And I'm sorry for that. Where is Captain Atom? Is Captain Atom not there? Is it? No, keep in mind, there's a new and then there's the existing line. There's 2 places to vote.
Right.
I'm going to double check that it's still there, though, or unless somebody else can beat me to it.
Hey, it's here. Wait, hold on.
Let me click on
Captain Atom is on the poll. Confirmed.
I agree. Well, I can't.
If you watched me vote, you saw that there's existing lines and then there's the new DC Finest titles. If you go under new DC Finest titles, or if you just, well, I guess depending if you have a Mac or not, Command F, you can find it that way.
Or
Captain.
Control F if you have Windows or Linux.
There you go. Captain Atom is there 1960 to 2011.
Oh, that's actually the other thing I really wanted to say, but I didn't want to interrupt Omar's clip it.
Go ahead.
There are polls that we've had drop downs on because the information is so overwhelming. And we kind of tell you go to Crushing Crisis, which I'm happy to have your hits, but that's not what we do it. We think it'll be easier. In this case, because there's relatively limited options, there's 100 lines, and I think there's 162 or 164 options. It just felt better to let you manage them all and see them all in a single page and not do the drop downs, which we know for people that just have touchscreen devices can sometimes be really tricky to deal with. So the upshot of that is you can Control F or whatever it is on your computer or your way through this page. I encourage you to do so. If we talked about it on the stream, it is on the poll. But I would also say, like, I appreciate it's a lot of data. It's a lot of information on the page. And I know that it's going to be slow to load. So maybe I'll throw up a Crushing Crisis page just so you have a separate non-poll page to look at, but it is absolutely not required this time around. Everything you need to know is on the poll itself.
Pulling up my laptop to vote. If this is successful, I hope we get an absolute version to this poll of this poll.
I got to design more slides.
You didn't have enough fun? You didn't have enough fun?
I didn't say that. Did I say that? Don't put words in my mouth, Omar.
Somebody needs to eat.
Probably be way fewer slides to create for that poll.
Exactly.
Sorry, someone has asked already, but will they ever do a Marvel Modern Era Epic Collection equivalent to collecting? Oh, they don't. Dude, we are just getting started. I don't think they even want to look at that stuff right now. I don't think they want to look at stuff post 2011 because I want Curtis. Glad you're here. How long was it before Marvel started the Modern Era Epic Collection? From the moment that they started the Epic line, when did they start the Modern line? How many years?
I think it was 10 or 11 years in.
It was, I think, right at the 10-year mark is when they started the Modern Era.
Yeah.
So give them some time. I'm sure they'll think about it. I'm sure if this is a popular line, like it tends to be, like it's over 600 people watching live, like I think they'll probably do it eventually, but I say give it some time. With DC increasing Trinity volumes next year, will the monthly volumes release increase also? I don't know. I mean, you would think so, but also they don't want to destroy your wallet, right? Like that's a lot. If they're releasing, what's the most epics Marvel has released over time, Curtis, to put things into perspective?
Per month? What do you mean?
Was there ever a week where we had 3 epics? I can't recall in the last 6 years if that's ever happened.
Well, no, on a single week.
Yeah. Was there ever
on a single week? There have been a couple that there have been 3 epic collections.
More than 3.
Typically, the average is about 5 to 6 per month. And then this year, the beginning of the year has been a little bit less, but in December there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They've got 8 epic collections scheduled for December of this year.
Okay, good deal. We're not allowed to say how many volumes exactly, but we are allowed to share that they're going to do more Batman, more Wonder Woman, and more Superman than any other titles. I believe there's also going to be more Flash, but not as many as Batman. If ever they want us to let people know, I'd be more than happy to let you know. Wait, hold on a second. How come there's no Western or sci-fi books? Or did I miss them? They're in there. I know because
I am control effing science fiction and Western, and they are all in the top portion of the book.
You have
And there
to
are two.
spell out science fiction because that's the name of the line. The name of the line is not sci-fi, so make sure you're spelling out science.
Yeah. Okay.
Well said.
They can do proto DCF volumes to post 2011 and reskin them. You know, I think they actually have fun remapping these books. I don't think reskinning is going to be a thing for them. I don't know. I say that, but I truly don't know.
Unless the mapping is perfect. If they do a perfect mapping the first time around, then they don't need to do it again.
Well, that, and I think DC Finest is such a, you have this really simplistic design. Don't mess with what works, I think is what I'm trying to say.
I will be showing some of the current results here in a few seconds. I'll let some more people vote. Wonder how Firestorm is doing, which is why I'm going to show.
I am just still in shock and awe of the Batman news. Every single portion of the Batman news that we got today, or we got to talk about today. Legends of the Dark Knight, to Shadow the Bat being in 1990 in post, to the fact that we're going to be getting Snyder, Dini, Morrison, Tony S. Daniel possibly all in one. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that we were able to share that. Has any of the DC Finest books gone out of print?
Yes, both the Green Arrow DC Finest, at least for a short while, they got restocks. At least for a short while, those did get out of print at some point.
They did. They knew about that, and right now they're at a point where they can keep an eye on things like that. Unfortunately, as things grow, it's going to get harder and harder for them to keep an eye on that. Curtis, before you go, especially, I wanted to share the screen really quick with some of the things that are happening live.
Oh,
Let me
pie chart.
Let me just show exactly what's happening right now as far as the ranking. This is, of course, new volumes of existing lines, and then we'll look at the new lines really quick. But here's the weighted voting so far. So most people, Batman, no surprise.
No surprise.
Big surprise, though, Batgirl taking the top.
Cannot keep Cassandra Cain down. She's coming for you, Bruce.
Green Lantern,
anybody.
Crisis, Wonder Woman, 80s, Batman, late 90s, Legion of Superheroes, Baxter era. And this is going to constantly change. Right now,
Where's Ragman? Where's Ragman on this?
Did you vote, Curtis?
I haven't voted yet.
Oh, well, there's your answer. Now, this is going to look a lot different. Maybe not. I don't know when we go over these books. But this is the way it looks right now, and this is the pie chart right over here, so you can get a better view just how many more votes Batman's getting for a number one. But then, that kind of makes sense, right? People really love that stuff. Plus, you get Shadow of the Bat. You can replace all those old trade paperbacks. Yeah. Damn, Ryan must have come in real late. Why you gonna come late to the class and then start asking questions like that? Ask your classmates. All right. Let's look up what's going on with the new lines, though. This is what I'm curious. Yeah, I kind of saw that.
Of course. Come on.
Legends of the Dark Knight taking the top, but look at Firestorm, man. You is there some TikTok about Firestorm I don't know about? What's happening? Zatanna.
Firestorm is constantly I think that as far as new titles are concerned, Firestorm's the one that's always being brought up on the Facebook group. That's not a surprise that's so high.
Collected. Yeah.
I know that every time that Curtis and I do our live streams, I feel like we always talk about it at least once. Like, can we just get a DC Finest Firestorm at some point?
Zatanna taking the top 3 right there. Shazam!
That's a surprising one.
Let's go.
But Shazam's another character that hasn't been properly collected, right? We've had the Power Shazam one trade and one hardcover. There were rumors of the Shazam books coming, but unfortunately those those actually got canceled. And then the Question, Hellblazer, John Constantine. We've got Martian Manhunter. Is the Martian Manhunter guy still here? Hope he is enjoying that. Oh, he is. Yeah. Batwoman, which is kind of crazy. This is modern Batwoman.
Yeah, I'm like, that's really well collected.
Actually, where are all the Amethyst people coming from? That's another one that I'm curious about. Because I got voted high in our
the Tiger Eyes poll was not
well on the High prize poll.
It did.
Yeah.
Then we've got Booster Gold. We've got Outsiders. People that were asking about the Outsiders.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
If you
Captain
want Mike W.
Adam.
Barr and Judd Winnick won.
And look there. Crisis must have been buying some votes because Wildstorm titles are hitting the top 20 so far.
Well, here's the thing. On the DC poll, Wildstorm's many different options. Here it's just one. So I would not be surprised to see the Wildstorm community go a little, forgive the word wild on the voting here.
I love the amount of love Young Justice is getting, even though there's Omnis.
I wanted it in that DC Finest line because I skipped. Well, I gave my complete collections to a friend of mine for his birthday like 5 years ago, and I do not have the omnibuses. That would be the only way that I would be able to get it on my bookshelf at that point.
Getting Black Lightning up there in the top 20, Legion and Rebels, another Legion book, and Dial H for Hero. All of this, I promise, will change by the time the night is over. All of this will change. Maybe not the top 2 books, but we'll see. Anything?
I have a pretty good inkling of what's going to end up number 1 in both line and volume categories.
If you all want to start some side bets, Dom has another channel.
Hold on a minute. No. I don't promote Kalshi on here, Omar. What type of person do you think I am? Come on, man.
What did you say? Couchy?
Kalshi, the insider trading block thing.
Oh, yeah. No, obviously
we don't do that here. I don't do that. You know, I got offered $100.
Good luck, everybody.
I got $100 for free because the fantasy football app that I use gave every new user, hey, we're starting a new prop bet thing here on our app. Please use it. I cashed out with my $100 while some of my friends lost over $10,000 with the $100 that they were given. So I think I'm doing a decent job.
Good job, man. Don't gamble. Lesson learned. Buy more comics. All right. Let's go ahead and sign off for tonight. Crushing Crisis, where can people find you?
I am to be found on crushingcrisis.com as well as Crushing Crisis here on YouTube. I stream every Sunday some stuff that digs deeply into data, not unlike what we did here. This coming Sunday, I will be going over my ballot on the DC Finest poll. So if you want to hear me talk about this even more than I already have, that is where you can find me next.
Dom of X.
You can find me here on Nearman Condition and also on my own YouTube channel where I run a Finest show with my awesome Eisner-nominated friend Curtis Finley, talking about all of the DC Finest books that have come out from the month before with a look ahead into the next couple of months as well. And I am also very thankful for the behind-the-scenes work that I was able to do in helping coordinate this event. And I'm really, really happy that you guys all seem to like it too. So I'm very appreciative of you all for watching. And I'm very excited to be back here talking about all of this with you guys in a couple of weeks.
Okay, and Eisner-nominated Curtis Finley, where can people find you, my friend?
I am on Facebook, the Epic Collection Facebook group, and also the DC Finest Facebook group. So that's where I spend my time most of the days. Just look me up those places. I also have a YouTube channel, Epic Marvel Podcast. And if you are if you're an Eisner-nominated registered voter, then please vote for the Marvel art of Michael Allred for Best Publication Design.
And I want to thank one last person that I think I overlooked earlier, and that is my buddy James, who's not only the guy in the chair, but he's been sharing this video and the actual poll in every nook and cranny everywhere on the internet. If you probably run across this, if your grandmother runs across this during the bingo hall, more than likely James shared it over there. Thank you, everybody, for putting all this together. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Smash that like button on the way out. I am the Uncanny Omar. I have no idea what day this is.
Yeah, seriously.
I really don't. What day is this?
Today's Monday. Check us out on your channel. Have a good day, everybody, and take care wherever you are.
By the way, if you're a fan of Transformers, the animated movie, I am going to be interviewing the team that is putting together the new record, the reformatted record. So some of the musicians, and that's going to be at noon on Thursday. That I know. Everything else, I have no idea what I'm doing, but have a good day, everybody. I'm out of here. We're ending the stream.